Hey, this is the next video in StarCraft 2 history, and this time I have two guests, the two most fanatical HerO fans in the entire world, I've checked. And in the middle box is Gemini, a what was it, moderator for all things Protoss. Is that right? Like
Yeah,
basically
yeah,
basically the guy who does all the strategic shit for Team Liquid for Protoss, basically, as far
pretty
as I
much.
know. And an avid HerO obsessed Protoss player. To be fair, there were not very many macro players back in the day, so he basically found the one and then stuck to him ever since and has never let go. But sometimes you just have to let go. Sometimes you just have to let it go. And in the far right, we have Ollie, who we know him as like the Team Liquid editor, but in his real life job, he's a journalist, and as a journalist, he spends his life trying to figure out the corruptions and the blatant imbalances in the world and trying to bring that truth to light. And not enough about current modern state of PVZ. We're actually going to talk about HerO. So, here, Liquid HerO is probably one of the best early Protosses. It's hard to say where he ranks up because in 2011 he doesn't really shine until near the end of it. But I'd say he's probably top five Protoss in terms of skill. But he doesn't get over his like mental issues until later on. So I guess we'll start with his first. Or do you guys have any general thoughts you want to start about HerO? If not, we'll just go straight to his first big tournament, NASL season two.
Yeah, I don't know. The dude's fucking sick. Like that's all I got. we can just go right into the first tournament, I guess.
All right.
Yeah, sure.
All right. So basically, we start with the Winter of Heroes. Is the first time he gets picked up by Team Liquid because he'd been practicing the OGS house the entire time, and Team Liquid was in that house, and they're like, "Wow, this guy's sick," and he was pretty sick, but he had never really gotten past the hellhole that we now know as the Code A, Code B, Code S qualifiers for a long period of time. And it is at NASL Season 2 where he finally shows his shit, so to speak. And I'm going to go ahead and skip the most of that bracket because you know what? Huangxin wasn't that good. Hasuabs, you were okay. Sen, you were pretty good, but you were no PVZ expert. And then we'll go straight to the finals. Do you guys remember this finals?
Yeah. I do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, HerO versus
Um,
Puma, the first clash.
This was
yeah.
well. Didn't they wait? Wasn't the DreamHack Open or
Was
the
that first?
Yeah, I
wasn't
believe
yeah
it was.
winner was
Yeah, winner was
Yeah.
first. I guess go with winner then.
yeah.
All right. Actually, it's the
Yeah.
exact same thing. Deal with HerO though. It's like Chef,
Yeah,
Cyplo,
yeah, yeah.
Rhett. These are not big names.
Mm, Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't he play DRG at the DreamHack and barely lost to him, but played really well?
I don't think DRG was at this dream hack.
No, he was. He lost to Puma,
Yeah.
Oh right,
but he beat Naniwa.
fucking Puma. All right. So
Dude, Puma was nuts back then.
I
Yeah, he
get.
was really good.
All right. Actually, I'll start. I'll start it off because the first two finals you end up with HerO versus Puma, right? And then
Yeah, yeah.
nobody remembers this because Puma actually accidentally ruined his own rep by the end of 2012 because he was a hardcore one-on-one player by the end. But back in the good old days, he was a straight up macro player. He was the guy going up 3 to 4 base. He was the guy trying to play outplay these Protosses in the late game. Pretty rare for a Terran player.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Right. So what do you
Yeah.
what
He
do
got a
you
lot of stick for.
yeah. So what do you guys remember
Got
of those finals then?
which one first?
The winter one,
Winner.
the one HerO
The winter
wins.
one. All right. Um, I think it's worth noting at that point that Hero and Puma were friends at that point and actually knew each other quite well.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't the first series they played against each other because before that DreamHack they played at an MLG,
Mm-hmm.
and I think Puma narrowly won that series, I believe.
Yeah.
Not sure though. And I believe they also played in GSL shortly before that. So at this point, HerO against Puma was becoming sort of the big rivalry in the scene. Not just because it was HerO against Puma and they'd met a lot of times before, but also because HerO had been picked up by TL and Puma by EG. So you had that whole Liquid versus EG rivalry that really came into its own when HerO and Puma kept playing each other. So everybody was kind of hoping for that finals to happen, and it did. And the games themselves were, I mean, in retrospect, they weren't that great.
Well,
It was a lot of cheese and a lot of mind games because these two players had known each other for so long. But what really showed in that series was that HerO was taken to his limits mentally and in terms of his abilities in the game. But this time, instead of a lot of other times before that, he powered through and he actually won the tournament, which was essentially probably the biggest moment in his career, I think.
I don't think that's the biggest moment in his career. He still had IEM Cologne in 2014.
Yeah, sure, but that was the big breakout thing.
That was his breakout. I'll give you that. That was his
Yeah.
breakout.
Yeah.
All right.
So, like, the cool thing about this tournament though is that, like Ollie said though, it was like the games were kind of weird because, like, you know, like one game was just like a 4-gate or whatever on like Tall Dream Altar,
Yeah.
and like there's a game. What was Dual Sight? That's the fucking
Yeah.
that really old map with like the two, like it had the
Yeah,
fire side and
the
the green
Dota
side or
map.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like that game in particular though is like that shows the like epitome of what HerO actually is as a player though. So that was really cool to see that, like, starting out like from the very first tournament that he actually won. Like, and this would kind of continue into like his later career as like just like something he's known as doing, which is someone who he finds his own way to make to counter a strategy in like such a like a bare bones way, kind of like
Mm.
1-1-1 was like basically like it was ridiculously strong at this point. Like Puma was rolling everyone with 1-1-1. Like everyone was dying to this strategy. Like people think like tank pushes or whatever were nuts in like 2017, like PVT, like that stats versus TY shit. Like no, dude, like 1-1-1 was absolutely like absurd at this point in time.
Yeah.
And like, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was about to say, this is something people don't like remember very often. But Modern One was even stronger back then than the tank pushes now because of how the maps work.
Yeah, maps were puny as hell, and like it was just like it was just such a more awkward way to expand, and like I don't know, this is the way it like worked out, like especially like the maps particularly were what made it so difficult. But so people just didn't know how to deal with so many different techs that Terran could get out as fast as they could, compared to like Protoss. Like Protoss couldn't really get their tech out like super fast.
Mm-hmm.
But HerO does this like ridiculous thing on Dual Sight where he goes one base, Stargate, Phoenix to blind counter the Banshee opener that Puma like almost always does with his 1-on-1,
Mm-hmm.
while also pressuring with like a Zealot and a few Stalkers at the front to start poking away at the wall so that it forces him to like have to look on both sides. Like basically like Puma has to do like damage with the Banshee while also defending at home with the like whatever tanks and other bullshit he's making to do his dumbass 1-on-1. But like no
You can
one
tell he's a
ever goes.
Protoss player.
Yeah.
Dude, I hated 1-on-1 so much back then. So like no one plays like that. Like no one looks at a build and then goes and just completely deconstructs it from the very beginning to start the snowball before it even happens. Like one base Stargate with a robo for observers in case he goes cloak. Like you didn't do that back then to deal with 1-on-1. Like at best you did some form of like, I don't know, you did Phoenix like afterwards or something to like deal with that. Like I did that sometimes, but like you still expand normally or whatever. You still get a robo because you need robos like for observers and whatnot. So like it was just so like it was such like a mind-blowing thing to look at that, and like you can see that kind of mentality come out of HerO continuously throughout his career as well. Like it's the same thing with the 4-gate too that he did on Tall Dream. Like he kills stuff before it happens. Like he's not someone who's afraid to like like, oh, I'm gonna be a cheesy macro or like a cheesy player, like I'm gonna be a dishonorable or whatever. Like if he sees an opening that can possibly be that can be abused, like he's gonna take that opening, and like that's such a I think that's like one of the most respectable ways to play personally because it shows a deep understanding of the actual game and metagame and the strategies that could possibly be coming out.
Right.
Yeah.
Basically, from my point of view, he was like the first guy to understand that Phoenix is um, kind of counter the woman one in a sense, and actually not only counter the woman one, counter like the tank bio style later on. And you actually see that today with Zest killing innovation, right?
Yeah.
Spoilers.
Yep.
But yeah,
Well, it was really spoilers though.
it wasn't.
Go ahead.
No. It wasn't just Phoenix's though. Especially on dual side, I remember there was this weird dynamic where if you wanted to defend a 1-1-1, usually you wanted to expand as quickly as possible so that your economy would get going faster and then you could start producing non-stop units. But as a response to that, Terran started 2-raxing Protoss, especially on that map. So opening Stargate essentially pretty much kills you if they 2-rax you. But here at that point was so familiar with how Puma played and how the build worked that he just made that Stargate. He threw that down and he went with it, knowing that Puma would resort to that build in that specific game on that specific map. And to me, that shows a lot about his mindset as a player in that tournament, where he was lacking that a bit in tournaments before. That decisiveness to go for that in a grand finals, that really showed him coming into his own as a player, I thought. And it was kind of a revolutionary build in itself to open Stargate against the 1-1-1.
Yeah.
But we already said that.
Yeah. All right. The way I think of HerO, obviously I'm like the only non-HerO fanatic here, so the way I think of HerO is like he's like one of those rare like macro players that based his macro off of aggression in a sense. Like he really believed in the idea that Protoss shouldn't just hold back and defend. They should be putting on the pressure. They should be taking over the game, and then they should be macroing behind it. So, yeah, you're talking about like his hard counters. He definitely did that at points. But there's also the fact that that even if those hard counters fell through, or like he ran into like a brick wall, he'd still have a kind of backup plan. It depends on how hard he went in, because that's like his great weakness. Remember like the games versus Sen where like he literally threw like 200 zealots and then died. But that's like we'll get into that later, because at this point nobody realizes HerO has this weakness, like because you have to get him to that point, and it's not like Puma could get him to that point yet. You think that's a fair assessment of HerO, at least this beginning part of his career?
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
I think that's what made him so special at the time, was that he understood the concept of Protoss pressure more than anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
Where up until the point where he started coming, of course, in the scene, it was Protoss either all in or they turtled and then killed people with like a Sentry Stalker Colossus arm.
Or Void Ray Colossus. Shoutouts to Guinea Pig.
But HerO was the first guy who kind of understood the concept that Protoss could also use these aggressive drop tactics or these run-by things and use map control in a way where it wasn't necessary to turtle behind 7, 8, 9 sentries. If your opponent was never going to attack you because he had a Prism in their base, or Phoenixes flying around, or Zealots ready to counterattack, then you didn't need the sentries because you didn't need to take a head-on defensive fight anytime soon.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of how HerO played. And nobody else ever did that until he came along. At least that's the feeling I had.
Yeah.
Like he's like I was saying before, like he's someone who actually understood like the the openings and the windows that you'd be weak in for different builds and whatnot. And he was the one that would actually be able to punish that without just sitting back and like being like, oh, like you have a window, I can't really know, I don't really know if you're like if I can kill you right now, so I'm just gonna keep sitting back and like then just kill you when I'm maxed. Like he was someone who actually saw the windows and like actually pushed them. Like if we go past like DreamHack Winter, we go right into the NASL finals as well. Like
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
looking over the games again, and like even though he lost the series, like I think that has to go to the point where like Puma and HerO were just like so evenly matched at this point. Like Ollie's saying, like they know each other and whatnot. So there's a lot of mind games. And
Puma
stuff.
also changed his style for that finals.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, I agree
Yeah.
with you there too. But like so like the game on Antigua, like he goes for a proxy cloak, or it doesn't. He just goes for a proxy banshee, and it gets kind of just like swatted away. Like HerO scouts it pretty well. And then he goes into like Blink Robo, which is something that I don't think was even coming into play though until like later into like 2012 or something.
Yeah.
Like Blink Robo PBT wasn't like it was used, but it wasn't used to like the way that it was, where it's like you're immediately in their face trying to like go between like the high ground or whatever and whatnot. Like I remember that on like Cloud Kingdom or whatever. But like then he goes into Blink Robo while taking a third, and then he just sees that Puma is like really far behind after the Banshee opening did nothing, and he just kills him with Blink Stalkers. Like he goes to originally harass, like with Blink, like he has an observer like into the main, and he just starts blinking Stalkers into the main base, and then he just keeps reinforcing and just keeps going, and just like he just kills Puma with Blink Stalkers while taking up to Colossus behind it. Like he knows so well, or he knew so well how to push players and punish players while not doing it in an all-in fashion. Like he's macroing up behind doing this. Like his third base is done. He's going into other tech with Colossus or whatever. But he just sees a window and he just goes and kills him with it.
All right.
Stuff like that is what made him like super, super good.
Yeah. All right. So here's my theory, I guess. In the beginning of StarCraft 2, talking about GSL opens to like maybe September 2011. That's all MC in a way, because MC is the first guy to understand force field. He's the first guy to understand aggression, and like because of these two like different things, he can figure out how to beat other players, and he also has like that killer mentality, so to speak, right? Where he sees a weakness and he'll go for it, or he believes like he can out micro anybody in a way, and he does. Whereas HerO is like the next generation of Protoss in a way. And it's strange because they were both in the same team house. But basically, right after HerO comes out, a bunch of really strong Protoss thinkers also come out, like within like the next 6 months. So we're talking HerO, Parting, Squirtle, Seed, Naniwa, if you want to count him. It's hard to say exactly what he did, but he was definitely part of that entire thing, right?
Yeah.
But even among all of them, like HerO's like unique in his own sense of how to play the game. And this is the point I'm driving at, is because we're going to go into 2012 where we see, or this is actually what I call like the first like jump for Protoss theory, in a sense, because you have all these great Protoss thinkers all coming out at once. Even Yonghua to a smaller extent. I don't think he's as like genius as Artosis might paint him as, but
Hey man, 3 Stalker Rush was pretty revolutionary in PvP. I'll agree with that.
yeah, that was revolutionary. That was revolutionary for Tal'Darim and Altar. I'll give him that.
Yeah. Steps of War. That was the game that I remember it being like first. Yeah, he first exemplified it on or whatever. Like Steps of War PvP. Fucking ridiculous.
Right, and the reason I'm going into that is because like the farther you go back into StarCraft 2 history, the more underrated every single player becomes, because for whatever reason, there's like a much higher recency bias in StarCraft 2 when it comes to players in terms of like what their relative skill was. Because my own personal theory is that you can talk about like the middle tier or the lower tier, especially in like 2013, 2014, 2015, as being much higher. But if you're talking about like the best players, that's where it becomes very muddled for me, because the meta changes, the maps change, and it's not like even if you send these guys back, it's not like they have it's not like they can bring back the future information, right? Because that's not a fair test of skill, so to speak. So it's always harder for me to like judge who was better at the highest levels of play. But and that's why HerO is probably like an underrated player in that sense. And he basically doesn't do much until it's GSL season 2, unless I'm misremembering something, right? He doesn't do much until GSL season 2 of 2012, because that's when he finally breaks through Code A,
Yeah,
right?
I think that's right.
Yeah, pretty much.
Right. And this is actually a very good tournament. And Ollie swears that HerO should have won this tournament if he had the right bracket. Is that right?
Yeah, he would have.
Yeah,
would have absolutely.
yeah. PvP was always his weak point. I agree.
No, PVT, he was actually great in that tournament, in PVT.
Wait, PVT or PvP you said?
PVT.
PVT.
But
no, yeah,
he
PV
threw Squirtle, and
yeah,
Squirtle
PvP,
at the time was
yeah.
the best PvP in the world.
Yeah, PvP was always HerO's weak point, but his PvT was nuts. Yeah.
Whereas like
Because he saw it in the tournament. He beat MVP before.
yeah, but that was
There
like
was that crazy
that was like
right?
MVP, not in playoffs. Just pointing that out. MVP in
Yeah,
playoffs is
yeah.
very different beast.
Yeah. But still, there was that game where MVP hit a base somewhere, scouted it,
Mm-hmm.
but he hung on for 10, 15 minutes against like 50, 60 supply differences.
Yeah.
Just because his unit control and everything, decision making was so good, even though he never saw the base. And at that point, I was like, okay, yeah, he's good. And then that series against Supernova, where everything that Supernova did
Failed.
just got completely destroyed.
That was a manslaughter
Is
fucking series.
Yeah, it was
Right.
to the point where HerO opens with a 4 gate in game 1, and it does nothing, just kills a couple SCVs. Supernova follows up with like a tank bunker contain, and HerO goes into charge and just kills him.
Yeah.
As if the opening had never happened.
Mm-hmm.
And then Supernova brought out this crazy Thor bio all-in kind of thing,
Yep. Sounds like
and HerO smashes that too, like the kind of build you probably never seen before, and HerO steamrolls it.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, I feel like he would have beaten every Terran he got, and the way he played against Zerg at the time, he beat every Zerg as well.
Yeah.
Was that did he get Symbol in the in one of the groups?
Not symbol doesn't come out yet until later in 2012.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because
But then
symbols.
it was Lenok, right?
Yeah, it was probably it was Lenok in July, and
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and say July fell off before this ever came up, so it's not like July was like
Yeah.
a huge threat.
Yeah. But HerO had great PvZ at the time as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't like his PvP was bad either.
It just
But-
wasn't as good as the best.
Yeah, and Squirtle was the best at the time.
And I'll go ahead and say, like, if you actually ran into Parting, I think Parting takes him out too.
Yeah, that.
Like,
But
and
I
maybe
still
even
think that-
maybe even Oz could have taken him out.
Well, Oz is Oz.
Oh,
That's like HerO's Achilles heel once
Right?
we get to like 2013.
Yeah, so Parting Oz, like that's why I don't actually believe in the line like he can make it to the finals, because like most of these guys in this
I mean-
in this tournament are Protosses. Like in the playoffs, there's like 5 Protoss.
yeah, I mean, but there's a parallel universe where Taja makes the finals, because at the time Taja was insanely good as well, and I think HerO would have beaten Taja. I also think he would have beaten MVP in the finals.
I don't think so, but we can get into that later. But basically, like, here's the problem with thinking Taja can get to the finals. Taja was never that great of a prep player, especially in 2012. Like, it's hard for me to think of it's hard for me to think he can think of a game plan to beat Squirtle or Parting, because he'd have to beat one of them to get to the finals.
I don't know.
Definitely not against Squirtle. He lost to Squirtle 3-0.
Yeah, Squirtle played that series really well, but
And Squirtle is like the best player at this point, so like that's kind of like my condition here is like Squirtle was the best player at this point, right?
Yeah.
Like, you guys
I would
disagree?
agree. No, that's agreeable, I think.
not entirely. I think he was the best at that particular moment, but it was also due to a lot of people not having figured out the way he played, especially against Terran.
Mm-hmm.
where he did the same Colossus build and just
Yeah,
altered it
sure.
slightly, and people just had no idea how to deal with it. There were variations that went and killed you, and then there were safe defensive openings. They all look very similar, but people just died to it because they made the wrong calls and didn't know what to scout for. But I think that's also part of why Squirtle fell off in the end. And it didn't last that long. He wasn't
He
at
was,
that peak for very long.
yeah, like it was like an
Um,
understanding of it was an understanding of the Protoss meta
yeah,
that put him like
yeah,
up to the top, right? It's also why
yeah.
like he might be a bit overrated in terms of his genius, but he was definitely a smart player.
No, especially considering uh, all the different builds he got credited for by Parting and I believe Band Naniwa as well.
Yeah, so
Um,
definitely a smart player, right?
so there was some kind of crafty ingenuity behind him, but um, I'm not sure if he was the kind of player that invented these builds and then executed them perfectly. I think it was just at that point in time he understood the game better than everybody else.
Yeah. Well, almost. There's MVP,
Almost. Yeah.
and that's like, all right. Let's go to the theoreticals then, because I actually think MVP would win if they met HerO in the finals for a few reasons. First is like MVP is hilariously great at preparation. It's a finals, and HerO never really got over his nerves, even though he won that DreamHack Winter. I don't think his like nerves ever really came into fruition. Like he never really truly got over them, and like MVP kind of rose above that shit in a sense. And then MVP also like you look into the finals against Squirtle, he kept taking out builds nobody had seen before. So I think it would have like it would have thrown HerO for a loop. So yeah, I'll go ahead and say I think MVP probably would have pulled off another miracle win if he had met HerO.
It's hard to say. Like
Yeah.
Like it's hard to say,
so
right?
it's so hard to say because like you don't know because like we don't know what HerO could have prepared. Like we don't know what if MVP would have prepared the same like bullshit that he prepared like versus
Squirtle.
Squirtle. Like it's so hard to know like what exactly like there's so many different variations. Like doing the what ifs is like so hard and like it's kind of just like
Uh,
almost meaningless like in terms of like finding like trying to figure it out. But like
Well, it depends on the
I think it
player, because I'll give you this. I'll give you this. HerO is definitely like a strange player to predict, and then MVP is almost impossible to predict, because like literally like he's pulling out shit every single round that nobody was even thinking of. Like when people were saying like Naniwa should be MVP, that's not a joke. That's a real legit prediction. Same thing with Parting, same thing with Squirtle, but he was just pulling out shit like nobody could have even thought of, right?
yeah.
But like put it this way,
Well,
I have a
honestly,
100% prediction rate on what Marine King was gonna do. 100% prediction rate on what Marine King was gonna do. There are some players you can always
oh,
predict.
congrats. Yeah.
Hey man, 4 racks in the mech on Metalopolis, right?
Jesus Christ. No. No, I mean, what I will say is that Parting should have beaten MVP, and I have no idea why he did. He just showed up an entirely different player.
Yeah,
Uh,
basically MVP like broke him in the middle of that series mentally.
yeah,
That's
it
my
looked
theory.
like it. It definitely looked like it.
Hmm.
But I think that Parting was the only PvPer at the time who was better than HerO, and I think there wasn't that big a difference between them actually. Because it felt to me like HerO was a more flexible player in the matchup. Parting was all about that new Zealot Archon Storm style,
Hmm.
while HerO could do both. He could do Colossus and Storm very well at the time. He was very flexible against all kinds of different builds.
Yeah.
Which is also why I think he would have fared better against MVP, because even in their series in the group stage, MVP pulled out like a really odd tank proxy. HerO found it and just killed it.
Yeah.
So I always thought that HerO was better against the kind of odd things that Pairing could do than Parting was.
Hmm.
So I think he matches up better against MVP than him or Squirtle do.
Yeah, but I think like HerO matches up worse against majority of the field because he scored all Parting and Oz all have his number in a sense. Like they all can have his number. Definitely Oz, and Squirtle we did see Squirtle beat HerO. So it's like, you know, It's hard for me to like rerun that and think Squirtle's definitely gonna lose this. No, it's not something I can think of, right?
It's hard to say
Yeah.
for Oz though, because this was before the time where the Hero Oz rivalry actually began.
But
Like
this
they
was
weren't
also
really.
during the time where like Oz was like one of the best PvPers still.
Yeah, I know. It's hard to say that still though. So like it's like unsure if like the Achilles heel effect would have actually came into play. Like it's so hard. Yeah, I'm really bad at hypotheticals like personally. So like it's hard to actually say like, but um, I don't know. I think it still would have been close regardless.
All right.
Yeah. No, all I'm saying is that if Hero had gotten past Squirtle, I think he would have won
All
the
right.
GSL that season.
Yeah. All right. So we'll go to the his GSL. Let's see here. Let's go to season 4. Unless there's like some tournament between then. You want to talk about GSL season 4?
Was there anything notable?
Basically, makes it to the round of 8, but this is like the first time. Basically, I'll just go ahead and segue this because this is like his better is probably one of his better results to the end of 2012. But I'm gonna segue this into HerO versus Broodlord
Right.
Infestor.
Oh
Oh,
God.
right. No, not that game.
There are so many.
Nah.
I don't know which game you're talking about. Could be
Not the Antigua game, please, dude.
The Antigua shipyard game.
Don't talk about the Antigua game, please.
You mean the most?
No, we have to.
That's like
we have to.
we ha- that, it was a great time for me, man. Personally, it's just
Yeah.
but
He also like Sniper though.
yeah. There's you have to appreciate the evil to appreciate the good in the world, Ollie. Appreciate the evil,
Right.
right? And in this case, I guess I'll lay it out this way: Broodlord Infestor had an answer for everything, and the answer was the same thing. It was this unit called the Infestor. So, for instance, imagine this scenario: you are facing a 2-base Protoss. What do? You make Infestors. You're facing a 3-base Protoss. What do? Make Infestors. You're facing a Protoss that has a land composition. What do? You make Infestors. You're facing a Protoss that is playing a sky composition. What do? Make Infestors. Basically,
More Infestors than usual.
yeah, more Infestors than usual.
Infestors.
You're facing a Protoss who's deciding to play the multitasking style. What do? Even though you're down like 5 bases and infinite amounts of resources, you make Infestors and you can still win. That is the summation of PVZ in a nutshell. And it is actually why I have this very long disagreement with Ollie that I think Parting and Rain were the best PVZers of this time because they understood you have to kill the Zerg before they get enough Infestors. That's my theory.
I would. So, okay, wait. Then what's Ollie's counter to that? Because I'm curious now.
Go
My
ahead,
counter
Ollie.
to that is, from a theoretical standpoint, you could beat Broodlord Infestor on some maps if you did everything perfectly. And HerO was the guy that got to that almost, at least. He was the guy that got closest
Almost.
to being perfect against Zerg in the late game.
Whereas my theory is Parting and Rain realized, man, that's a fool's game. Let me just all in these fuckers. Guess what?
Yeah, fair enough.
It worked.
Yeah.
So yeah. So then I would agree. I would agree with that, but I would still then say that like that's why I think still Parting and Rain were the better ones at this point in time. Because like up until this, like up until Broodlord Infestor, HerO's PvZ style, HerO's late game PvC style was what you. I think it was like near perfect. I agree because he was the first person that was actually putting out like multiple Warp Prisms in late game and just harassing nonstop from 2 different fronts with Warp Prism harass. Like no one else was doing that pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was also the first one to actually start using Warp Prism harass to get himself back ahead after becoming behind in early game. Because like I'll always remember this is the first game I ever saw of him. Well, actually no, the second game. The first game I saw him in like a GSTL or something like way long ago. But like the first time, like the game that made me fall in love with him is DreamHack or MLG Raleigh, I think MLG
Yeah.
Raleigh, 2011. I think that's the MLG that it was against Idra on Metalopolis. He would like did some garbage zealot DT like bullshit that did like nothing, and then he is going into Robo and like Robo Bay, and so we're like, okay, he's just gonna go Colossus like and just try to hold off, but he goes fucking Warp Prism speed while being down like 50 supply versus Mass Roach, and he just does Zealot Warpins on each side of the map like continuously, and then he just somehow wins. Like that was mind blowing. No one did that.
Yeah.
No one did that. White Raw was the only person that memed sometimes with special tactics Warp Prism shit. No one did Warp Prism speed after losing like completely, and they were like, that was just ridiculous.
Well, nobody even did Warp Prism speed when they were winning, so.
Exactly, that too. Yeah, exactly.
I
So
mean,
like,
in retrospect, considering how small Metalopolis was,
It's
Warp Prism speed was a bit unnecessary.
but like,
just
but like
multiple-
that's retrospect. But like back then, like that was still like ridiculous. Like Metalopolis was like the map, right? That was like those are the big macro map. Like, other than Tall Dream Altar, I guess, but
yeah,
whatever.
Antigua Shipyard.
Yeah, Antigua was, yeah, I agree.
Well,
Okay,
it was the
fair
first. It
enough.
was the first one for like the first half of a year. Shout out to
Yeah.
Marine King for somehow losing proxy position against an ST somehow with double racks against 3 range queens.
Good times.
Lol. But like, so like as I was saying though, like he had that like style even back then before he got his first place at DreamHack Winter, and then he extrapolated upon that in late game PvZ throughout 2012 up until Broodlord and into Broodlord Infestor era. He tried to continue to do it in Broodlord Infestor era, but like we were saying, like it became almost impossible. But like before that, like right before until Broodlord Infestor came out, he was the one that was doing double War Prism harass nonstop and just killing Zergs in late game, showing that you could actually out harass them and play a multitask style instead of just sitting with a death ball. And he went to even further and did shit like he would hallucinate mass Warp Prisms with a real Warp Prism hidden inside it in that cloud with 2 immortals in it to snipe Greater Spires. Like that was one of the things that he did to try and stop the Broodlord Infestor shit, and like it worked sometimes, but you know, Broodlord Infestor became Broodlord Infestor, and that Antigua game versus Leonok is the epitome of everything that was wrong about,
or everything that was right according to David Kim. Now there was a.
that's why he doesn't work for Blizzard anymore.
I'll add some context here because, basically what HerO is doing, especially with the Warp Prisms early on, is super underrated in the present day. Just because Warp Prisms were kind of shit back then, and what I mean by that is it takes like 3 hits from a queen to kill it. So you have to be very delicate. You have to be very controlled with using it, especially with your positioning. Because if an Overlord sees your Warp Prism, and if the Zerg correctly reacts by pulling a queen, that's it, just a queen, your Warp Prism will probably die. And then another point to look at is that Warp Prisms didn't have the range pickup, so it was much harder to do. And finally, the last point is hallucination was something you had to upgrade. It wasn't free.
Yeah.
So you had to spend that money. So you had to spend that money. So in terms of like resource to risk, it was very much in HerO's favor. Do you have anything to say about this period, Ollie?
We're also talking about the point in time where Protoss didn't have defensive measures like a Mothership Core or shield batteries to stay alive at home while you're doing this fancy Warp Prism stuff.
Yeah, when Protoss were still men.
Yeah. So you actually needed to figure out when making a Warp Prism was the right thing to do and how far you could stretch that map control you had through the Warp Prism to stay alive at home.
Yeah.
And that was HerO's specialty in a way. He always knew exactly the kind of unit composition he needed at home to be safe against whatever Zerg could throw at him, while they were also defending against his Warp Prism and harass on the other side of the map.
Yeah.
Like he was stretching himself extremely thin because he had this ideal in mind where if he has these units and does everything perfectly, it works.
Yeah.
The only thing that was troublesome with him at times was execution.
Yeah.
But everything else was wonderful to see.
Right. So like when I bring this up every once in a while, but basically if you're theoretically thinking about latter day Protosses, like Classic, Stats, Zest, maybe if you want you could throw in Rain, even though Rain like shows up pretty soon. Like CJ HerO, the fake one. Or maybe he's become the real one by this point.
Yeah, Kinda.
But anyway, I'll actually give credit to Liquid Hero in this instance. I don't think any of them had what it took to do what Liquid Hero did. In terms of style, in terms of execution, in terms of strategic and tactical thought, I don't think any of them could have done what Liquid Hero did by that point.
Yeah,
So
because they didn't have the same mindset as he did.
yeah, and they never did.
Because
Like you can see it in their games.
yeah, because he was someone who always had a mindset of I can multitask you and I can out creative think you, and win by pure like brute force in terms of in that regard, like that is his thought on the game like up until now, like and by now I mean like
When Legacy of the
however
Void
many.
broke him, yes, I
Yeah,
understand.
and no, but like when like in the last like I don't know 3 months when he like would try to stream with like patch 4.0 or whatever, like the same things that he would be doing then he's still doing like now, like even though he doesn't really play anymore, like he he just has this idea in his head like all he was saying, like if he just has this idea that he can do all these different things and he could if he just does them perfectly then he will win the game. And I don't know exactly remember where I was going with this, but like it was just like it was such an interesting thing to see because and okay, so you're saying the point right because you were saying no one else would do that.
Yeah,
Because no one else had that mindset because everyone else was still on that idea that you had to be at a forefront the macro defensive Protoss if you wanted to play into the late game. Like you had to play defensive first, and then you kind of could do other things second. His ideal, his thought process, and why he was able to do the things he did in such a good way is that he was a harassment player first to back up the defensive macro. He used war prisms and harassment in such a way that it gave him space and time to get to the places that he wanted to be. And that's not what other people were using harassment for, at least with Protoss up until that point.
right. And now I've talked up Hero a shit ton. Talked about his style. Talked the fact that all these future great Protosses couldn't do what he did. But there's actually a double-edged sword in Hero style, and you first see it when he plays against Sen. You remember that? You remember that series? I was on Toddler and Altar, where
Uh-huh.
Which tournament was this?
I think it was like
That was
one of
no,
the
that was
WCGs or
It
something.
wasn't the first, but that was BWC, I think.
Yeah,
Uh,
base.
but that was after the Linux game.
Yeah, it was after the Leanock game, because obviously, like the Leanock game is actually more about how broken Brutal and Fester is than it is like an indictment on Hero. This is an indictment on Hero because guess what? You're talking about, oh man, he was so good at those comebacks. He was so good at multitasking, but he actually, this is the point where it's like he kind of got too obsessed with it because he got a gigantic lead on Sen. He actually had, if he had literally just sat back and done nothing, he would have won that game. But instead, he literally kept harassing with war prisoners, kept harassing with zealots, and that's how Sen wins that game, basically. And this is actually a weakness I think in Hero, is that if he got too far, he actually would just start styling on people because that's what he enjoyed doing. It's like he just stopped thinking of I want to win and started thinking, what other cool shit can I do? And then that's how he lost those games.
Yeah, this is the corollary to. Actually, I don't know if that's the right way to use that word, but like this is the opposite effect of like what his actual mindset was. Like I was saying, where he would, like you said, he would take it too far and he would style on people to his death, and that is something that he still does to this day. And what I've seen of him recently, like he like that is there's the world where Hero is like the absolute perfect and multitask god, where he knows exactly when to harass, how much time he can buy, and what he can kill someone with. And then there's the other world where he does that up until a point, and then he realizes that he's like, holy crap, like I'm so good. And then he just continues doing it for way too long, and the game is just thrown right out the window.
Yeah.
And it's just like those are the games where I'm just like, Hero, please, like I understand your style, but like I want to just like, yo, reel it in, please, just like the tiniest little bit. Like, oh my goodness,
This is actually
so frustrating.
It's actually why Hero was one of the players I liked, because his strength was directly correlated to his weakness.
yeah, it was such a strange
The
phenomenon.
irony
Like
of life.
it was I don't know. Ollie, you can continue with this. This is my biggest frustration with this kid ever.
No, we touched on everything. It was extremely ironic in a way. Um,
What made him so great was what cost him a
I,
bunch of games.
I yes, essentially that. I don't even know what else to say. And um, there was one thing I wanted to add where Hero against Brulon and Fester. There's actually another game that I think is even more important in the
Onion
historical
versus Hero.
context. No, not that. I never saw that, and I never will. But um, the game against Sulky on Whirlwind,
All right.
where Hero essentially he completely takes Sulky apart, kills all his bases until Sulky realizes, shit, this guy's killing, and abandons all thought process and just walks around with his spine crawlers, abandons all his bases, and wins the game with Broodlord Infestor Queen and one or two spine crawler army.
Yeah, I remember this.
Yeah, and that was the point where Hero had actually done everything perfectly that he could, and I
Almost.
think Sulky realized in the middle of that game that, hey, my race is fucking broken, and I can
Yes.
walk these spine crawlers around with me.
Uh-huh.
And that was the game where I think everyone needed to realize that Brulad Infestor wasn't beatable. Because the thing you were supposed to do against it was what Hero did. You were supposed to run around the rather slow, immobile army and kill their buildings and force them to attack you. But then Sulky realized he could take his buildings with him and eliminate the only weakness that Brulad Infestor actually had.
Yeah.
And I think that game should have made absolutely clear to everybody how broken it was.
Instead, we got
And
ladder win rates. See, 50% all across the board, guys. So,
yes,
shout outs to David Kim again.
yeah,
Nice, man.
But no, actually, like I actually get the point. But this goes back to our original point, where it's like, you're thinking, oh man, he played so perfectly, he played so good, he still lost, and I'm thinking he should have just soul trained this motherfucker. That's what I'm thinking all the time. But
thing is though, that was never one of his.
that was never his strength. But it's like
He was always bad at
it's
that.
better
He
than
was
it's better than the
always
alternative.
100%.
It's better than the alternative of playing into it. That's my critique. Because it's not like you
Yeah,
actually had to be that great at it to steal wins. So, all right,
Yeah, that's true.
we'll go into a much happier matchup, and probably I'd put this like among like Hero's top 5 series ever played. It's DreamHack Winter 2012 against Tasia. Even though I don't think the finals themselves are that entertaining, but what Hero does to Tasia is very interesting because like he basically like breaks down Tasia.
And this like goes back to the Puma shit too, right?
Yeah.
Like this is a series, this is a finals that shows you that he knows how to deconstruct builds and attack weak points so well. Like he slaughters Tasia in this series. Like it's not even like you said, it's a bad finals. Like it's
Yeah.
terrible to watch. Like oh my god, dude, this series was just like yeah, this just goes back to his like his roots of just being able to pick apart things and just see windows that other people didn't really necessarily see.
Mm-hmm.
I think another thing to add to this is somehow I think Hero got into Tasia's head,
Yeah.
where I would have favored Tasia in standard games probably against most Protoss really.
Gets every Protoss in time.
Yeah, pretty much. Maybe like a parting Squirtle kind of type player might be able to take him on in a straight up game. And I guess Hero maybe, because for some reason Tasia did these weird things on Metropolis, Ohana, Cloud Kingdom, and Antigua Shipyard. I just saw, where he never played to a standard. On Metropolis, he went 3 command center. On Ohana, he did this weird 1-1-1 variation with tank, marine, and medivacs. Then on Cloud Kingdom, he opened Banshee into like a standard bio game, but it did do a lot of damage.
Right.
And then on Antigua, he just died to a blink ball in.
Yeah.
Where I feel like for some reason, HerO threw Tasia completely off this game.
Mm-hmm.
And then everything Tasia did from there looked second to whatever HerO was doing.
Mm-hmm.
HerO was ahead of him by at least 2 steps constantly.
Yeah.
The game on Ohana especially, that I think was what broke Tasia in the series, where he had this weird build that I'd never seen before myself. This tank marine medevac variation of a 1-1-1.
Mm-hmm.
And HerO countered it so perfectly. Essentially, he made a Dark Shrine at a time where the only reason why you would make a Dark Shrine would be the exact build that Tasia was doing.
Or if you're
Because
Inca.
against the regular, yeah. Or if you
Oh
were
yeah,
behind,
I remember
or
this
any
game
reason.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking
This
about.
was a beautiful game.
Yeah, because HerO read him like a book,
Mm-hmm.
and the Dark Shrine went down at the exact perfect time.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know how it happened, but HerO knew exactly what Tasia was doing. And just killed him. Straight up killed him. And from that point, I felt like Tasia was sort of indecisive in every move he made.
Yeah.
And even in the openings he chose. And that's so unlike Tasia that I've never seen a series like that from him ever again.
Actually,
so weird.
no, you see it again, but it's against HerO again.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
So I think it's like, was it NASL? I think it might, or maybe I'm just thinking of his GSL against MC. But basically, Tasia's always had like this problem against these types of Protosses that are more on the aggressive end. But it's not like MC and HerO played similar at all. So
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure what series you're referring to. I saw the one against MC in the GSL. I thought MC just outplayed him,
yeah,
but I've never seen Tasia
like break down this
be
bad.
so, mentally deconstructed.
Yeah,
That was odd to me,
yeah,
because Tasia was amazing at the time.
yeah. But to be fair to Tasia, this is like his 3rd month into his prime or something. It's like maybe his 4th month, and he's a rookie. So whereas like HerO's been playing for like a year or 2 at the top level, year and a half maybe at the top level, depends where you look at it.
Yeah, still, we're talking about a guy who
Who ends up being
reversed
like
all
hilariously
build,
great.
like the best Korean teams.
Yeah,
Even at that point, he had already gone on that killing spree.
Yeah.
In IPL, Team Arena.
yeah, he's definitely a prodigy. So
Yeah.
right, I
And
guess.
didn't he already win the DreamHack?
Yeah, he already won something. Like
I think he had. Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly what it is, but that's like something you have to keep in mind. Is like Tasia, maybe he wasn't like all there quite yet, just mostly there.
Mhm.
I still think he was mostly there.
Yeah,
Like, I think I remember like thinking about this like when it was happening. Like, I was excited for this, like seeing that finals line up the way it was, only because like not only because it was like Tasia versus HerO, like Team Liquid versus Team Liquid, because like that's like sick, but like Tasia was someone like at this point where everyone was like, holy shit, this guy is nuts. Like people knew at this point that Tasia was going to be like the next big thing, and he already kind of was the next big thing.
yeah,
So
Yeah.
like to see HerO deconstruct him, like Ollie was saying, in this way, like that Ohana game, like I remember sitting there watching. Like now that I'm looking at this again, like I remember sitting there watching this game, seeing the Dark Shrine go down, and just be like, what is propelling HerO to put this Dark Shrine down at this point
the
in time?
spirit
Like,
of Inca.
I was so I was so confused. And then when it started to unfold in the way it did, I was just like, this is the smartest player I've ever seen in my life. Like I went and laddered, and I won like however many games by going Dark Shrine against like these 1-base bullshit things. Like that was just like a ridiculous game. And I think Ollie's right, is that it broke him for the rest of the series.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment. And to put this into context, basically Tasia is, by this point, at least in peak form, he was the best Terran in the world. I'd say he was the 2nd best Terran in 2012 overall. I'd still put MVP first, just because of how they matched up against all the different players and stuff. But Tasia was insane. And for those who think like this was an easy era, Tasia actually kills everybody you think was great later on. So that's he literally kills everybody. Like there's no player he does not beat later on. So that's like in a way that's like it shows how good HerO was at this point. Right?
Yeah, I think it also shows the mind game aspect of team relationship, though.
I still don't know if actually they practice against each other. That's like my question
mean,
I
mark.
don't think they did.
Because
I
there's
don't-
no way Tasia practices a lot.
Sure, but like they had to at least know something between each other, right?
Yeah.
Like they had to
they had to
they
know
at least
a
had to
little
know
bit.
tendencies, and like I'm sure they played maybe some games. Like it's like I can't. I mean, like neither of us. I can't speculate to the point where they definitely played a bunch, and you guys can't speculate to the point where they never played because like we just don't know.
I just know
But,
like Hop
I feel like there's something like else in this where because like HerO had to have known something about Tasia to see this build forming the way it was, and for HerO to be like, yep, I need to go for a Dark Shrine.
or maybe he just played against Puma a lot. And then Puma liked to
mean-
use that variation once. Like it's
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
possible.
yeah, maybe, but still, like, I think it's still there's still a little bit to be said to the.
That's
the
a
team
that's a fair
oriented
point because
of it.
HerO does beat him again at NASL, which is like the next
Yeah.
tournament they go to.
Like they end up being like 50-50 in matches
Overall.
for like so long. Yeah, it wasn't until like the very end when HerO started to like
Fall
really
off.
sink down that Tasia ended up pulling ahead in that regard.
Yeah. Right. So NASL season 4. This is the one where HerO wins, and actually I think this was more legit than all of his previous tournament wins because he plays a bunch of pretty good players here. Finale wasn't that great, but still a PvP.
He was a good player.
Like-
He was good at.
He was good at the time, but it's like he had all like the nerve issues, and he was playing against and like his PvP. Like it's not like this was like rain or partying or something, right? It's like
Yeah.
so it's
By the way, finale was Duck.
yeah for those who don't know, and then for those who don't know Duck, you should read my article or Ollie's article or both. But yeah, basically he beats Finale, he beats
Great guy.
Tasia, beats Polt, and then beats Violet.
Yeah. That Pole series was really impressive to me. That was really good because Pole at the time was one of the best PvPers around pretty much
Yeah.
in the entire world.
Probably the best, to be fair.
Yeah.
Like after Tasia, because Tasia's only weakness is against
Yeah.
HerO, really.
And Violet, pretty sure, didn't he just come off the IPL, like a really high IPL finish?
Yeah, I think he
Or was that just after that?
it was close. So basically, Violet is like
Yeah.
a top 5 Zerg at this point, and he's basically nobody wants to say this because Violet's such a nice guy and shit, but he was a patch Zerg to the bone. I'll say it. He was a patch Zerg to the fucking
he
bone.
was- Yeah.
Like this,
No,
this,
he-
this guy was the true patch Zerg of patch Zergs. Did nothing
he was a
before,
good patch
did
Zerg.
nothing after.
Yeah. I just checked IPL 5, like that hugely stacked tournament.
Yeah,
Uh,
he just
was
won it, right?
after NASL season 2. He got to the finals and barely lost to Lenok there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So Violet was one of the best Zergs
Yeah.
in the world at the time.
and he abused,
To some degree due to Rootloud Infestor.
dude.
But
Some
he was,
degree.
Some degree. Look,
To some degree.
I'm gonna.
He was a good player, I'd say.
He was a good player at the time, but I'll say this:
Yeah.
Broodlord and Fester was such an amazing composition. It was such an amazing build that, by its very existence, it buffed every other Zerg build. So you'd be playing Muta-Ling, Baneling against Terran, and they'd still be countering for Infestor because guess what? If that Infestor comes out and you don't have the counter, you're dead anyway. But that's always been my problem with like the sniper run, the life run, the Lenok runs, is in the back of every player's mind they are playing against is Broodlord and Fester. And same goes with Violet, who did all those aggressive like roach pushes. And like he can only do that because even though his economy is a bit fucked up, he gets Infestors that makes up for everything. So yes, he was a patch Zerg. Swear to God. It's not like he's relevant anymore, so I can say it.
Rip.
Yep.
Anyway,
All right.
what were we gonna talk about?
NASL
Yeah.
season.
You have any thoughts about it? That NASL season 4 he won.
I just like the series the series versus Violet in general, because it showed a lot of what HerO is capable of, and even to like the point where, like you said that, I mean, like we've said that he wasn't really a Immortal Sentry all-inner, right? He wasn't really a Soul Trainer. Like he wasn't someone who would like usually use those types of builds with like insane success rates like Parting would or whatever. But like he was still someone who could bring them out regardless, and like he would still show them with his own like little like flair or whatever. And like that's what ended up winning him this series versus Violet at the end, on Whirlwind. Like he goes for an Immortal Sentry LN, albeit a later one with like +1 attack and like extra immortals and whatnot and like extra sentries, and he just goes for it, and he just like continues reinforcing for like as long as possible and just does the most ridiculous like amount of force field donut rings or whatever. Like Violet's trying to come in from like every single angle, like he's in the middle of like the natural base and like the third and whatever, and he's just force fielding around his entire army or whatever. Like he's still someone who will do these 2 base timings, but he does them like with his own little flair, and he does it with his own something that like, I guess like not really something that only he would do, but like it's just something that he modifies stuff to his own accord. He's not someone who will see like a build is like super strong and then copy it like building for building, like supply for supply.
He should have with Parting's build though. Let's be real.
But
Parting Soul Train was the best Soul Train.
No one did it the way Parting did though. Like let's be real. But like he's someone who sees a strategy that's good, but then modifies it slightly to something that would comfort him better. Yeah. And that's what we kind of see in this game. And then the rest of the series is just him being the multitask like god that he is, which is just also awesome.
Yeah, I will say on that point, like HerO is a bit similar to Huck in the sense that he had to be a comfort player. Like you could give Huck all these refined builds, but if he actually played them, he would be shit for whatever reason. But you let him use his inefficient builds, he's a lot better. In his prime anyway. Same thing with HerO in a sense. Like you could give him like these refined builds, but unless he's allowed to like change or modify them into his own weird mindset, he can't really use them. And that's kind of like, I think that's actually the reason he dies off in Heart of the Swarm.
And that's the reason why he never did well in Legacy, and why he continues to never do well in Legacy. And we can talk about that.
We'll talk about that. We'll talk about his tombstone, which may or may not be the tombstone of StarCraft 2, depending on what you think StarCraft 2 is.
Oh yeah, let's go there. But
yeah.
No, I wanted to add that, especially that DreamHack and NESL kind of showcased how much he had grown as a player in that year since winning DreamHack Winter 2011.
Yeah.
Because at these tournaments, it wasn't just him playing his own style and nobody being familiar with it, or him just outplaying people. But as you said, Dylan, against Violet, for example, he Immortal Sentry'd him, I think, twice.
Yeah.
And he threw in a lot of different builds where they wouldn't usually fit on his spectrum before, but he had added them because he realized he was getting predictable, and he was struggling in different areas by doing only things he was comfortable and familiar with. But at these tournaments, and then later on at the start of Heart of the Swarm, he added a lot of variety to his playstyle, and it made him a lot more of a mature player, I would say, in that it wasn't just him doing his thing, it was him doing his thing and doing what everybody else was doing because it was good.
Yeah, but like I guess it's skipping to the point, but when it gets to the point where he can't do the stuff he's doing, that's when he really falls off, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And we'll get to that later because it's an interesting topic about the soul of StarCraft in a sense. But there's one other tournament I think he actually does really well in that I want to talk about. Is the WCS Asia. Basically, this is the year where like they did like a WCG like tournament for BlizzCon, And the reason I want to talk about this is basically he makes a pretty good run here. From I remember, he beats Seed, he beats Parting, gets into the upper bracket before he loses to Rain and Parting. Yeah, I believe that's how it went. Rain and Parting take him out.
Yeah, he got top 4 or
Yeah,
third
top
or
three, third.
yeah, top 3.
Yeah. Do you guys remember any of these PvPs?
Let me check the bracket.
Yeah, because PvPs in
Yeah,
general,
I do actually.
PvPs in general are not that memorable unless they're like Rain and Parting playing against each other, in my opinion. Because those guys
Yeah.
had a definite, stronger understanding of it.
Yeah. For some reason, I felt like that tournament wasn't really notable for HerO because the PvPs he played were odd.
Yeah.
The Seed and Parting series I remember was a lot of weird, hectic unit movement
Mhm.
where it was a time in PvP where either it was really structured, defensive, very well mapped out games, because that was after the point where Rain had sort of revolutionized PvP, and everybody knew how to get to late game and what to do and all that. But this was a point where people were trying to figure out different early and mid game timings to kill people before they got to like a late game army.
Mhm.
And I remember the HerO against Seed and HerO Parting series being exactly that, where both players were looking to hit each other in like early mid game, and then a lot of weird army movements were created from that, with sort of mid map half army engagements and that kind of stuff, where it felt kind of sloppy to me, all of that.
Mhm.
And I think HerO deservedly lost to Rain in
Yeah.
the end, who was just flat out a better PvPer.
Yeah.
And then, yeah.
Mhm. So there you have it. Ollie admits Rain was better.
No, Rain was the best PvPer at that point.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
you can't really say
By
much.
far,
yeah, he
far.
basically choked that finals against Creator. If you remember,
Yeah.
like Creator just did a 4-gate and then he
Parting.
missed a force field. Or Parting, yeah. No,
Wait,
no,
he
it's against
won that.
Creator. It was Creator. Parting plays Creator in the finals.
No,
Was it?
No, it was
not
Rain
at that
Parting.
tournament. It was Rain Parting, and Rain wins that.
Oh, okay. No, I'm talking about the finals of like the BlizzCon finals or whatever it was.
Oh, the BWC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where like that's the one where he chokes against Creator. Rain does.
Yeah, that was like essentially the timeline is this: HerO plays against Rain in GSL, and Rain for the first time ever really showcases this complete understanding of late game PvP, and suddenly everybody realizes,
That
holy shit,
Rain is the
we've all
one
been doing everything wrong, and we need
forever.
to study what Rain is doing.
Yeah.
And then the WCS Asia happens, and people haven't yet caught on to Rain, and he wins that. But then the next tournament, BWC, is when everybody started playing the way Rain was.
Yeah.
And that was when he was first beginning to drop PvP series again.
Yeah. But
Which was a big
still the
thing.
best probably.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
All right. So now we get out of Broodlord Infestor era. The
Thank God.
the most despicable era to have ever been in StarCraft 2, and the fact that you can kind of if you can somehow relate imbalance to that era, you're probably fucking up somewhere. It's that's my take on it. That's my take on it. Not making any judgments on current Legacy of the Void or CVP, but we go into WCSNA where HerO tastes freedom supposedly, but apparently he was actually in Korea the entire time. Right.
Up until the finals.
Yeah, up until the finals. And
At least like the offline portion of the
yeah.
tournament.
And these there's always been a weird sentiment about the WCSNA specifically, because it's not like it was all foreigners, it's actually a lot of Koreans. So for whatever reason, people people think these are worse to place in than current WCS tournaments. I don't know why. Like when I try to argue with it, they're like, but was it really as good as when Neeb won against all those foreigners? Like, what is wrong with you people? But basically, HerO wins the first one, and I'd say the playoffs were pretty decent. Played against Alicia, played against Ryung, played against Revival. Uh, but it's not like I don't think this was like super special. What do you guys think?
Mm, I think he was flat out the best player in that tournament
Yeah,
by
Yeah.
a distance,
yeah,
and it showed in the end. Um, the Revival series was, I think, it was a one-sided steamroll aside from the first two games,
mm-hmm.
and I think the really notable game there was Belgium Vestige, where HerO was down by a huge amount. We're talking like 60, 70 army supply difference.
Yeah,
And he goes around the map killing 3 or 4 armies of Revival and then wins the game.
Yeah.
That, to me, showed... essentially, when that happened, the series was at 2-2, but there was no doubt in my mind that HerO was going to win the series,
mm-hmm.
and he did. So,
Right.
I don't think it was a notable tournament in the end. That I still think that WCS NA at the time was better than EU.
Mm-hmm.
It had a lot of decent people looking at it. Revival wasn't bad at the time. It had Snoop. It had
I had a bunch of
Alive.
pretty good, strong mid tier players.
Yeah, Alicia, Young.
Alive.
Yeah, it wasn't that
Yeah.
wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
It had Nesty too.
Fucking
Nesty
Nesty.
pulled. Yeah.
God damn, Nesty was so bad by the end. It's so sad.
Yeah.
But whatever. Yeah. I guess I'll segue this into PVZ in Heart of the Swarm because it's not until Snoop finally breaks through, and what I mean by breakthrough is like he literally played 20 million hours of Swarm hosts on ladder, so that equates to about 20 ladder games. So it's not until he finally breaks through and teaches the world the power of the Swarm host later on. But before then, it was much more of Wild West feel, in the sense that there wasn't necessarily a perfect answer for either the Zerg or the Protoss on how to play. And this is actually the point where HerO is like HerO is still a legit like PvZ player,
Yeah.
right?
This is the last point in time where I would say that HerO was a PvZ player and like his matchup was understanding and abusing. I don't know if abusing, but like just understanding PvZ and like being able to do really good builds with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, because I think at this point,
is
like,
where he starts dropping off.
yeah, at this point he's allowed to do all that weird shit basically. Like he's allowed to
Yeah.
pull out weird compositions all the time.
Yeah, this is the last point in time where you're allowed as a Protoss player like free reign in terms of what build you're opening and like being able to actually propel it into the mid game. This series versus Hyun at I am Shanghai.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This was the example of what of the time when PvZ was actually interesting and
This is literally the last time
enjoyable.
PvZ is a good matchup.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you look at these games, all three of the, even though it's a 3-0 by HerO, all three of those games are just so like they'd have such a diverse set of builds that all play out differently and in a completely interesting and just like this series is just like one of my favorite series of all time because it is such a these games are just so interesting to see. Like there's like a one base, there's like an expand into Dark Shrine build that goes into a Zealot Archon, Zealot DT attack into Zealot Archon pressure, and he just like snowballs and wins. There's a 2-gate Phoenix, Mass Phoenix build after going Dark Templar. Like these games are just so like you don't see strategies like that anymore.
They died out.
Yeah, they die out for so long, and then like sort of, I mean, like in Legacy, sort of DT Archon drops come back, which is kind of the most similar that I can think of.
But it's not
Like,
really the
even
same
then,
at
it
all.
doesn't work the same. Yeah, it doesn't they don't work out the same. Like if you go back and watch these games, then you'll see like why this game that game specifically is Whirlwind, and like that you'll see the differences between that and what it was now. Like there's just something about it that was so interesting. Like HerO was able to abuse like the tiniest bit of harassment like throughout the entire game and just snowball victories so hard. Like I can't describe a PvZ like that anymore.
It was not just that series; it was also the one against Jaedong in the groups
Yeah.
at IEM Shanghai.
Yes.
That was also a
yes.
great series, and it played kind of similarly, where
Yeah.
there was a lot of tech switching from Jaedong and HerO. There was a lot of reading the opponent, making the right calls, and then trying to be one step ahead by making, like faking a tech switch or setting up tech switches to go into the next tech route immediately afterward.
Mm-hmm.
And it was beautiful to watch because it felt very fluid and intelligent from both players, whereas nowadays a lot of times just making units and A moving and suiciding into economy because economy is the most important thing ever in Legacy.
Yeah, it's
like. But since we're on the topic of IEM Shanghai,
yeah,
He
we
should have
should
won
talk
this
about
tournament.
HerO Oz. He should have won this tournament.
Oz ruins everything for HerO.
Yeah.
This is when Oz becomes Hero's Achilles heel.
Yeah,
Go
because
ahead.
HerO again at this tournament is again the best player in the field.
Yeah,
This was when the EGTL house was starting to really bear fruit, where Coach Park, I believe, had been in charge for a couple months.
mm-hmm.
Where at the start they were having rocky results, but around this time was when they were actually performing okay in Pro League.
Yeah,
And in all these individual tournaments, you start seeing EGTL house players performing really well. Like
Mhm.
this one, for example, Oz was in the house, HerO was in the house, Revival, who eventually wins the tournament, was in the house, Alive was in the house, and that's 5 players.
Yeah.
I count that right.
There might be more, but no, I think that's it. That's it.
Maybe Hyun was in the house as well. I'm not sure.
No, I think actually
No, Jaedong was in the house.
Jaedong. Yeah,
Jaedong
that's
was
the
Hyun.
that's the
Yeah,
last
Hyun
one. Yeah.
wasn't.
Yeah, but that's 4 out of the top 8 were EGTL house members, and Naniwa was there as well.
And if you put Jaedong in a different group, he probably makes it out. He might make it out too. Like he
yeah.
had a really tough group.
Yeah, he had arguably the 2 best PVCers at the time.
Yeah.
MC was good at matchup as well.
Mm-hmm.
So the EGTL players, all in all, were doing really, really well. But unfortunately, along comes Oz, who perhaps through that team dynamic, completely had HerO figured out.
Yeah.
And there were like 2 or 3 tournaments where
you heard that long-suffering sigh. That's actually the sigh of someone who understands that if Oz didn't exist, HerO probably has like 3 or 4 more tournaments.
Yeah, he legitimately would have won this tournament again because it was Revival in the finals.
Yeah,
he would have dumpstered Revival, dude. He would have dumpstered Revival. I can't even explain to you how much he would have destroyed him. Like, oh my god, Oz was just so bad at PvZ at this point. Like, I don't understand how he 3-1 like DRG. Like his finals.
No, Dongegu was even worse as EVP. Let's be fair. I
know, yeah, but like, yeah. So okay, fair enough. But like, what like his like Oz's finals or Survival this series, like, holy shit! I watched that series with the most like a dying heart. Like every opportunity, I was just like, HerO would have destroyed this build. HerO would have destroyed this build. Revival had no answer for what HerO would do in this regard. Like, oh my god, dude! Nothing tilts me more than this tournament. I can't even describe.
Really?
My feels.
I mean, the only thing that could tilt you more is the fact that Oz continued to stop HerO.
Yeah.
Constantly.
Yeah. And it was such. Oh my god, dude! This last game, I was so. Oh my god, there were so many opportunities in this last HerO versus Oz game.
Yeah. It's not even like
it wasn't just
Oz was that great of a player, to be honest. He was literally only like his entire living in 2014 was based off, or 2013 was based off of beating HerO.
No, not just that. He was also there was at the 2013 season 3 finals.
Yeah, stopped in the playoffs.
Deer beat HerO in the first series.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, Deer won the tournament.
Yeah,
he was
I remember
by far
that.
the best players in the world.
Yeah.
But HerO actually played 2 extremely close PvP series against him.
That was such a good series.
Oz randomly won the group, HerO had to play Deer again, and then lost to Deer again in the final.
That's what you get. You see, this is what happens. Sometimes there's a player that actually literally ruins your life. And HerO found Oz. Just like HerO had ruined Taja's life a little bit in 2012, but this was like a much worse scale because at least HerO was a great player. Oz is not a great player by any stretch. He might be like an above average player. So
Yeah, not at that point in time at least.
Yeah.
There was in 2012.
2012 he was legit. 2013 he was
he
not
was
that
legit
great.
good for us, but at that point
This,
in time.
oh my god, dude, this Oz game. Oh my god.
Are you
I'm going
watching?
back and
Are you like
Which
just
one?
getting tilted?
because this is why I remember this was the most frustrating thing in the world, because HerO was constantly so this was on Star Station. It's a completely normal opening, so like they go for like Blink Robo, like it's really normal. They're going for Forge. HerO is scouting with hallucinated phoenixes so much in this mid game. He's going around every single angle he could possibly find, trying to find if there's a third base. He wants to know if Oz is all-inning him or not. He's going back and forth between the third bases. The hallucinated Phoenix goes up past the third base that he takes the pocket third. Oz takes the pocket third. The hallucinated Phoenix misses the third base by a pixel. It goes by a pixel too far to the top, and then it loops around and dies to a stalker in the natural. He sends another one. He shift clicks it to the top third, and then shift clicks it to the pocket third again. It goes to the top third first. Randomly, Oz's army is just out in the middle, in between the two of those bases, and it somehow intercepts the Phoenix another pixel away from seeing the third. So HerO thinks he's getting two base all-in for a decent portion of time before this is going on, and only now, like only later, like a minute later, does he finally end up seeing the third base. And that Phoenix almost died to sentries too. It was one hit away from dying to sentries, and Oz was like moving across the map. So like he would have continued to think that he was getting all in. Like, oh my god, dude. And that late of a third alone ended up, because the game was completely even up until that point. That slightly earlier third propels Oz so far ahead in his mid game, and then he just ends up like winning off of that, because HerO has no probes. He stopped all probe production because he thought he was getting all in. That game tilts me beyond belief to this day. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically mirror matchups are almost all mirror matchups except for some TVT ones, specifically like MVP versus Innovation or whatever. Like you can never really let yourself fall behind that far, and that's actually why like before rain comes into play, like PvP is so fucking unstable the entire time in a sense, because like you can't really let them get ahead of you in economy, so you just attack, and then because they're attacking, you attack. In a sense, like that's kind of how it goes for the entirety of StarCraft 2 history.
Oh, what I just saw. Oz beat HerO in the 2 remaining WCS.
Yeah, that's why I said Oz ruined his life. That's why I said Oz ruined his life, and Oz
was the Achilles heel of HerO.
Yeah, like no, Oz ruined HerO's
I thought
life.
It was just that I Am Shanghai.
No, dude, it's like
season 2 and the season finals. It was season 3 as well.
Yeah, no, Oz literally ruins like HerO's like 2013 career basically.
God.
That long suffering side wasn't just about like one game. It's like that entire year, like Oz actually ruined HerO's career.
And they were in some of the stupidest games you've ever seen too. Like I just like this fucking Star Station game, the last game of the series. It's tied 2-2. Like the other game before that was on that weird ass fucking map. What was this fucking map called? Red City.
Yeah.
Like this game was also just a ridiculous like. I can't even.
You know what's great? You know what's great about this series of Oz versus HerO throughout the entire thing is like Oz is actually has one line that is credited to him as the most famous thing I've ever heard from a PvP player. It's like he said, "PvP is all skill, no luck." And actually, he literally started winning off of luck this entire time.
Yep.
It was hilarious.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I remember that fucking quote.
Everything right.
That's actually the dark time he loses always PvP power too, because after he said that he started getting the shit stomped out of him in PvP games.
Yeah, he was winning everything, and then he said that, and then he lost everything.
Yeah.
That the hubris took him down, but then once he started to truly believe in the luck, that's when he started beating HerO.
Yeah.
Okay, can we stop talking about Oz now? I'm gonna get depressed.
All right. Let's see. So basically, Oz ruins everything. That's kind of how 2013 goes. Overall, he gets like 2 top 4s, a WCS NA first place. I will say.
I guess.
I'll come back to it later, but.
I guess we should talk about the 2013 BlizzCon, where I thought HerO was extremely unfortunate to get SOS in the first round.
That was so unlucky.
Anybody who met SOS was unfortunate, man.
Yeah, but I think HerO, what I saw from him before that tournament was quite encouraging. But he just drew essentially the best player at the tournament, who nobody expected to be good.
Yeah.
So SOS eliminated on the B stream, which was unfortunate.
Yeah, well, so did Duck. He also died on the B stream, but he took Innovation down with him. That was a great tournament for me.
Yeah. That was I could talk an hour about that series. That was amazing.
The Duck series.
That was
one of the best series I have ever seen.
The Duck series, yeah. That's actually
Duck against Innovation.
You know what? We'll do this later, but that's actually worth a video in and of itself, because that's literally Duck's greatest series he'd ever played in his life, and then he quits, basically.
Yeah.
But it was a nutty series, but I remember at the time like hating it so much because I hated everything about Duck as a player back then.
No, you should have.
Like he played so bad, like his army movement, like I remember that series. It was just so bad, but it was also like amazing. Like I don't remember exactly why.
No, like
it just was.
He did all the big map shit perfectly, in a sense.
Yeah, he wasn't a very intelligent player, but there was something about him that made everybody play like a complete idiot against him. And Innovation, the first two games in Frost and Whirlwind, it just got caught off guard by first that weird blink all-in that started popping up, and second, he didn't make a bunker against the 3-gate pressure all-in kind of build.
Yeah.
No,
and suddenly Duck was up 2-0.
Yeah.
And then Innovation goes and plays super carefully the other two games. Duck goes and all-ins him and loses. And tied at 2-2, Duck goes in like the 5th game, the elimination.
He all-ins the other way.
And plants a third Nexus off of one gateway. And like 1 or 2 Stalkers. And Innovation has no idea until his first medevacs and Marines get across the map.
Yeah. That's
to
genius,
pull that
right?
out is brilliant. And I fucking love him for it.
Yeah. Yeah. It actually shows like Duck was a thinker in a sense.
Nobody knows it ever happened.
Yeah. Yeah. Nobody except like a few people. But no, Gemini, did you ever hear my theory about evil, basically? In StarCraft 2.
I think I've heard it a few times.
Yeah, basically, like, throughout the entirety of StarCraft 2 histories, there's like a bunch of players pop up that literally have no chance of ever doing anything with their careers. But what they do realize is, I cannot win, but I can ruin somebody else's life. Yeah. And I can do it with the cheesiest, most abusive builds. So, of course, he started off with Inca, bit by bit, Haas, Shine, Hiva to a certain extent.
Oh, 100%.
Duck. Like, all these guys, basically, they existed to ruin somebody else's life, and that's it. Like, Sniper was the greatest of them. He actually won a GSL off of it.
Yeah.
But yes, that's actually the dark underbelly of all the StarCraft 2 gaming that nobody wants to realize, but cheese is just as legitimate, and if you're a bad player, you should cheese all the time. That's actually why I respect Haas. He understands how terrible of a player he really is, and that's why he always does all this stupid, crazy shit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There was a funny series between Keen and Squirtle, I think, in the GSL.
Yeah, around the 16.
Where, Keen, I think, 2-raxed him twice.
Yeah.
And then in the interview said, well, I knew I wasn't as good as him, so I had to find another way to win.
Yeah.
And I think that's a respectable mindset, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because he's not deluded about his own abilities. He knows Squirtle's probably a better player, but he's there to win. He's not there to try his best and get beat.
Yeah,
so if he has to cheese, he cheeses.
Yeah,
fair enough.
That's why I've always like had a certain respect for all these different types of players.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
always have. But I know this actually tilts off like the face of the earth every like half of like the respectable StarCraft 2 fan base. Where like, no man, you gotta play right, you gotta play smart, and you gotta play
honorable macro only.
Yeah, and then I'm like, no, dude, you see that 7 pylon wall from Haas? You don't need to do that shit.
You know the fucking nice usernames video on that?
Oh, he did. Did he do that? I don't
Yeah,
remember.
the song like the drop it, bow, now, now, like that song.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like he
So
does it with the Haas, like the mass cannon walls and shit.
Yeah, fucking Haas so evil. All right, there's actually one last tournament I want to talk about because I think, listen, he has some good results, has some games, but I think I Am Cologne is like his last stand in a sense.
Yep.
Right, it's also his
yeah,
best.
that's fair.
It's also his best tournament victory in my opinion. I don't know what you guys
Yeah.
think, but I think this is the one where like he really showed like the prime strength of him as a player because he beats Innovation, he beats Jadong, and he beats Polt.
Mm-hmm.
It was also during the Blink era, so there's like a bit of like context in
Yeah.
there to throw in. So what do you guys remember of this tournament?
I remember that PVT at the time was extremely broken
Yeah.
to the point where this is prime Blink era,
Mm-hmm.
and I think after that tournament
It got nerfed.
was the Widowmine mothership for
Yeah.
all the different
Yeah,
nerfs.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. We can talk about the Little Mine if you want, Ollie.
Yeah,
I
no,
don't think we need to derail that hard.
we
He could
don't
go off another
do that.
2 hours on that.
Okay.
yeah, okay. What I will say though is that again in this tournament, HerO had by far, I thought, the best PvT in the world
Mm-hmm.
because you saw these people, you saw Classic, Rain, and essentially Classic and Rain
Yeah.
in this tournament.
Basically, like two of the
Go
other
up
three
against
best.
Bolt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go up against Bolt. And they played their own version of the game. Both were quite safe, but Classic, I think, did a lot of blink pressure into Robo Colossus.
Yeah.
But HerO had his own version of that playstyle where he would go blink into I think he skipped the Robo entirely.
Yeah.
But
He went straight into Storm.
Went
Mhm.
straight into Storm, and Storm and upgrades. And nobody else was doing that, but at that time it felt like by far the best way to play the matchup.
Mm-hmm.
And he executed that so perfectly because it played to all his strength. It was harassment oriented, it was multitasking oriented, it was basic units, very expanding focused playstyle.
Yeah.
With lots of aggressive potential as well.
Mm-hmm.
And he made that playstyle his entirely. And where Classic and Rain failed in the quarter and semifinals,
I'd say it's like
they essentially what they did was they allowed Paul to play his game
Mhm.
because they thought they could outplay him
yeah,
by just
big
being
mistake
defensive.
there.
Yeah, and Paul struggled against him, but he found a way against them.
Man, Polt is
Somehow
a
he
Polt is a
broke their
tactical
defense.
genius. Let's be fair. This is like prime peak Blink era, and he beat those two.
Yeah.
Like, and the way that strengths line up, like Polt is not a micro player in any sense. His APM is actually worse than a majority of players.
Yeah.
But he was a thinker, and he actually outthought both of them.
Yeah.
That's
I think
actually
for
why
this
this is
tournament-
only a good finals is because it's Polt. If it's any other Terran, like it's
Yeah.
a trash finals.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think for this tournament we can go through both sides of the bracket and explain the matches because to me that's still the best tournament I've ever seen in StarCraft 2.
Okay.
Not-
Okay, hero fan. Okay.
It was
Not
it was a
because
good
Hero won,
fucking
but
tournament, dude.
I'll be fair. It's a
every
great tournament.
single
It's like one of the
game
best.
was
But
amazing.
come on, man. Like, all right, let's go.
If you look at the series and how they unfolded and the quality of games there, I don't think I've ever seen that at any other tournament.
Yeah. Tournament match for match probably.
Yeah, let's go Polt against Classic first.
Yeah.
That was essentially Polt had a decent group stage. He beat Stardust and he beat Mana.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there were two Protoss, but
Mana
weren't the biggest
did
names.
not play that game, and Stardust is Stardust. Like,
yeah. You would in like normal balanced circumstances, you would expect Polt to beat both of them
Yeah.
quite convincingly.
mm-hmm.
But honestly, I thought he would lose to Classic because Classic had just before qualified through the Korean qualifier.
Yeah.
and he was
on another level.
essentially Rain and Classic at the time were the two best products in the world.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
This is early, very early 2014, so just before Zest arrives at that level.
Yeah, that's correct.
So, yeah, we're looking at Rain and Classic as the two big Protoss guys,
Mm-hmm.
and Polt somehow beats Classic. Classic, as a player, has always done these huge variety play styles of Protoss.
Yeah,
where
basically,
in some of these
Classic
games
is like
he-
the harbinger of Hero's doom in a sense.
Yeah.
Like just the way he plays the game, the way he thinks about the game is very different. It's
Yeah.
like the polar opposite of Hero, where like he takes all the builds.
Mm.
He takes all the builds. He plays them standard. He plays them to an extremely well thought out degree, but he isn't unique at all. Like he isn't like truly unique the way Hero is.
Yeah.
So that's why I consider him like the antithesis of Hero, and the rise of Classic is actually the death of Hero because that's kind of how the game plays out.
Yeah, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
I think what made Classic unique was that I don't think there was anybody else
Who could do that many
that could
builds?
do that many builds.
Yeah.
Like Classic could do everything.
Yeah, he's actually similar to like, did Ollie just drop out?
Maybe.
Hmm.
Wait, am I still here? 'Cause
Yeah, you're still here.
My internet looks like it's being kind of weird.
All right, you're still here. I guess we'll stop here for now. See if he comes back. All right.
Okay.
Basically, Ollie just dropped like Hero War Prism, so now we're back, and now we're talking about Classic versus Polt. Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Essentially, Polt made things happen that shouldn't have happened in that series. The Alta Zim game comes to mind where Classic had Observer Vision and pylons around his base, and he had phoenixes flying around as well. But Polt knew that he had to drop in, had to find some way in to do damage, or otherwise Classic was going to steamroll him a few minutes later. And he essentially he took unusual paths for his medevacs, specifically to avoid places where he thought that Classic would be putting observers in.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually found a way in and won the game.
Yeah, that's why he's a smart player.
Yeah, he's an extremely smart player in this tournament, and he does the same to Rain later.
Yeah.
Polt just found ways to beat Protoss that
Nobody else can replicate.
nobody else could have pulled off.
Yeah.
And against the two best defensive Protoss as well.
Yeah. Like
So, yeah, go ahead.
no, basically, if you want to think about Polt, he's actually the only guy I'd call like the Sun Tzu Terran in a sense, because he's literally avoiding all the strengths of the other opponent and attacking their weaknesses. Like he might actually be like Fabian or some shit, or like he never truly engages. Like he just avoids them, and then he counterattacks. Like that's his entire strategy. That becomes his entire strategy after he realizes everybody mechanically is better than him in some point in like 2013. And that's how he becomes as a player, and it's actually why he's so good in metas where Terran is weak. And so in that sense, he's like the opposite of innovation. Where like Polt can understand weakness and strength and how the entire like matchups and dynamics of players and like the race work out. Whereas innovation, he can only understand it if Terran is the strongest. Like that's my view on it anyway. It's also why like Hero stomps the shit out of innovation, and then he has he has a hard time with Polt.
Yeah.
Dude, I was gonna like he plays innovation so hard in that series. Like he abuses every inch of innovation's tendencies that game, or that series.
Yeah.
Like innovation at this point was like the defensive, like not defensive, but like he was the like macro
Standard Terran
corner cutter.
Yeah.
He was the one who would be as like he would be defensive but as greedy as possible. He would cut as many corners to be as efficient as possible, and HerO abused that so much.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's like blink all-ins, like DT DT rushes. Like he just obliterated innovation like nobody's business. Like it wasn't even a close series whatsoever. And like again, this goes back to fucking 2011. Like he's someone who looks at a person, sees windows, and just abuses them like no one else. Basically, he was the oddball in this tournament because every other Protoss was playing standard defensive macro. Again, the sit back and be passive, just super standard. But he throws in his own shit and he opens up the windows that no one else was opening, and that's why he's the one that ended up beating Polt in the finals. Like he was the one doing the weird shit, whereas everyone else was trying to be the honorable macro Protoss.
In a sense, like obviously everybody starts opens with Blink Stalkers. Just HerO does it in a way better style.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like he does. He like HerO. Like that's the cool thing though about the series versus Polt. Like I say like they were being honorable macro Protosses, but like HerO was too. Like he was playing macro. Yeah. He wasn't just blink all-inning every single game and winning. Like he played a macro game that was different than the others and did it in such a
unique
beautiful
style, right?
Fucking way. Like storm drops, literally constant, like non-stop storm harassment. Like 70 plus fucking SCVs dead in like 2 of those games at least. Like it was just like you don't see harassment like that from anyone else basically. Like Prism, like storm drops and HerO are basically synonymous after that tournament, I think.
Well, it's also his like last great tournament, so I don't know if that's the case, but this is also the last great tournament where like storm drop is a thing.
Who was doing storm drops after that? I'm just gonna put that right there in front of you.
All right, I'll say this: he was the last one to do it, but there were other Protosses who did it before it. They all did it at the same time, like parting.
He did it. HerO. He did it first, then others did it, and then he closed it out.
Yeah, he closed it out eventually. But
anyway,
go ahead.
So, if you think back to the semifinals of that tournament where he plays straight on.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
That was a great series.
He should not have been in this finals.
Yeah.
So essentially, what happens is Jaedong opens 3 hatch before pool on Yonsu.
This fucking game.
In the 5th game of their semifinals, and HerO tries to kill him with 4-gate follow-up, I think.
4-gate. He does an Immortal Sentry.
No, it was a Soul Train. It's a Soul Train.
I think it was a variation of that where he goes
of course.
4-gate pressure first into Immortal Sentry.
Yeah.
And it fails.
Yeah, it fails.
And it actually fails, and Jaedong gets to Hydralisk Peck, which, if you got there against Immortal Sentry, and you actually defended an Immortal Sentry attack, you're pretty good in the game.
I don't actually think so. It depends on the map.
Sure.
Yeah, but it also depends on the player. Like,
I guess it only depends on the map because Yonsu existed.
Yeah.
Yonsu was the deciding factor in that game.
Yeah.
Because HerO essentially rallied and tried again. And he tried and kept warping in, and he mined out his main and pulled the probes to help out.
Yeah.
And for some reason, somehow, with Warp Prison Micro and force fields and everything, he wins that game.
I told you, he should have sold trade in 2012.
Yeah. But there was no Yonsu in 2012.
Yeah, so. Man, but like Farting and Seed did it, so but basically, even though I like joke about calling it Soul Train because that's what Parting calls it, in a sense it's actually true, because this is like the type of all-in where you literally put everything on the line, in a sense, where like you're betting all of it on your micro skill, your force fields, your ability to like adapt on the fly in the battle, and that's why it's actually fitting to call it a Soul Train, because you are putting everything on the line on this all-in, so to speak. And the fact that like HerO is able to force it out, even though he failed basically at the beginning, is very it makes it for an incredible like final game. I'll put it that way.
This game, this is probably one of the most memorable games I've ever had of HerO, because like you said, this like this is a Soul Train that was with his own flair added to it. Still, it started with the 4-gate warp in pressure to try and punish the third. It gets completely shut down. He follows it up with the Sentry Immortal, which would like that would be the closing move. It's a classic 1-2 punch PvZ build order where you open with 4-gate pressure to deny a fast third and then kill him with the Sentry Immortal. But the Sentry Immortal that also gets shut down.
Mm-hmm.
But he survives with the two immortals, and he brings them back, and then he just goes for it again. He just like everyone was giving him shit for this. Like this was like the classic fuck force fields, like fuck immortals, like era of PvZ.
Mm-hmm.
But like this, like to testament to like what Stu said, like he put his fucking soul into this fucking build, dude.
Yeah.
He didn't like any like so many other players would have just lost with the 4 gate, lost with the Sentry Immortal first push. They would have just left the fucking game.
Yeah.
They would have given up. He did like he put every fucking ounce of his fucking essence into this goddamn game.
Yeah.
And then just somehow pulled this shit out, pulled the pros back with the fucking attack as well. Like he was as all in as you could ever get with this build. I remember sitting. We were like, it was like this was like what 4 years ago, like almost to the day. Like what day was this? This was the 13th.
Yeah.
So in 3 days, well, in 6 days because this game would have been the 16th.
Yeah.
So in 6 days would have been 4 years on the dot as to when this series happened.
Yeah.
I remember like sitting at my family dinner for my dad's birthday. I'm like looking at this game on my phone, and I'm like seeing like under the table, like I'm like looking at this game like as it's progressing. I'm like, this is like holy shit, like this is how he's gonna fucking like end it or whatever. And then after the first all-in fails and he starts to come back, I'm like, okay, like I need, like I just get up and like go to my computer, like I have to like watch this, like to see how it ends or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And like I remember seeing him go in for the second attack and him pulling everything with it. I'm just like, oh my god, like this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And he starts making magic happen with fucking force fields and his ridiculous immortal micro. Like I don't care who the fuck. Like you're saying that Sentry Immortal was broken at this time. Like his immortal micro in this series was absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I remember literally fucking shaking. Like my mouth is on the fucking ground. Literally my hands are shaking. I'm just like, what the fuck am I watching right now? And he somehow just pulls this game out of his ass.
Yeah.
With he put fucking everything into this fucking all-in, dude. He just like this is the other opposite like end of HerO where like not many people see him as this super emotional dude who like throws games and like is super tilted after a loss. But then you see this game where the opposite of that happens, where like you see the emotion come from the other side, where he puts everything into the game and he comes out with these insane games.
Yeah.
And like wins in the most ridiculous way. Like he is like the greatest like emotional player, potentially other than Duck. I know there's like that whole Duck.
No, Duck is not an emotional player, not really. Like,
hey, dude, I mean he was fucking like everyone loved when he cried or whatever after he won, but like
no, like
he
okay. What I mean by emotional player is like he's not powered by it in a sense.
Okay, sure, yeah, sure.
HerO is
okay,
definitely powered by his emotions.
Yeah, HerO was someone who put his emotion into his games, and he was entirely empowered by his emotion, like you said. Like he either lost with it, and you saw it, and when he won with it, you saw it too.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god, dude, he put every ounce of himself into this goddamn game, and I will respect him forever for this one. Like I can't like describe this game any more than what I have already, because like it is like, oh my god, dude. This is the greatest memory I have of him.
Okay, I'll put it this way. In PvZ, I think it's actually a shit matchup for a majority of StarCraft 2 history. It's my opinion. But in PvZ, there's actually this essence of, on the Protoss side, where it feels like it's impossible to make a comeback. And among the top 5 comebacks, 4 of them are parting, and then the last one is like HerO. And HerO basically pulls off a peak parting performance in a sense, and that's just a style that isn't in HerO's like repertoire, and that's what actually makes it amazing, is because he like plays way above himself to take this one away from Jaedong. That's how I'd put it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like until like the very end of this game, he is behind in supply like the entire fucking time, and he's still like he pulls the probes. Like, oh my god, dude. This game is just...
It's a brilliant game, right?
This is just ridiculous. Like, I can't even believe
like
this happened.
That's actually why I do call it a soul train in a sense, because it does feel like you're betting everything on it.
You are. You put your heart and soul into this game, and this is what he fucking did this game.
Yeah.
Like, oh my god.
Yeah, like I said, should have soul
So,
trained more.
yeah. So after playing that series, and this is to me why I Am Cologne stands out as such an amazing tournament.
Mm-hmm.
So HerO against Jaedong ends, and there's power breaks down,
Yeah.
essentially for I believe it's 4 to 5 hours.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, we're at they restart at 2 a.m. and this entire time, Polt and HerO had time to think about each other and how they would approach the next series. And think back to how HerO used to be in 2011,
Mm-hmm.
or throughout his entire career.
Yeah.
This was someone who probably would have been extremely nervous at this point,
Mm-hmm.
and would have probably gone insane waiting for this match to happen.
Yeah.
But something about him was different at that tournament. Essentially he was an extremely mature player there.
I'd say he got reforged by that soul train.
Yeah, probably. I mean, if I did that,
I'd feel like confident as fuck if I won that game,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And the way he approached the Pulse series was extremely intelligent, I thought.
Mm-hmm.
Because up until this point, he'd played 3 PvT series in the tournament.
Yeah.
And 1 rather cheesy PvC series.
Mm-hmm.
He'd beaten 4GG twice, and then he cheesed Innovation the fuck out. And then he essentially cheesed Jaedong out. So the way he approached the Pulse series was completely different. Essentially, he did the same standard opening that everybody else did, but he played macro behind.
Yeah.
And it was so different from everything else he had shown in the tournament before. And oh yeah, right. So after these 4 to 5 hours of break, HerO and Polt play on Heavy Rain.
It's a tie.
And
That's a
HerO
classic,
plays
right?
HerO plays a brilliant game 1, and Polt starts base trading, floats his buildings away, and
Does
they
the Fabian,
yeah,
so to speak, right?
yeah,
HerO won this series 6 or what is
yeah.
it?
He
5
won the
to
series
5 to 2.
Yeah.
essentially because he had that game 1. There was no way for Polt to win, but
Polt's a
if
genius.
Polt had
He's so
eliminated the next side.
yeah.
Yeah, it was brilliantly played from his perspective, but it must have been so frustrating for HerO to wait 4 to 5 hours, play an extremely competent game, and then draw in the fashion that he did.
Yeah.
But it was also a sign of how improved he was as a player and how stable his mindset was there. That
Mm-hmm.
he went into Heavy Rain again and he beat Polt again, essentially. And this entire series, I tell you, I think it's one of the most underrated series in the entirety of SC2.
Yeah.
And it's one of the most entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are so many highlights from that series. The draw on Heavy Rain, HerO on Frost killed like 60 SCVs and then still lost the game.
Yeah.
Because Polt was a genius.
That game was nuts.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So then on Habitation Station, HerO goes and kills all 3 mineral lines of Polt.
Because he realized it wasn't enough against Polt.
Yeah. While simultaneously defending his main and his third base with Rogue High Templar.
Yeah.
Then on Yonsu, he did this. It was like a non-stop fighting game where HerO eventually pushed into Polt and steamrolled him over. Then on Daedalus Point, it looked like HerO had the game won and Polt sniped all his next side.
Mm-hmm.
And then Polar Knight was,
that game,
to
dude.
me,
Holy
the best
shit.
game of that entire tournament. It was a 45-minute game of non-stop fighting, and every single piece of army mattering in some way.
Yeah.
Because Polt was non-stop looking for openings to snipe tech economy.
Mm-hmm.
HerO was doing this. You had 2 players going at each other.
Yeah.
It was there were no punches pulled in that game. They went for each other's throats for 45 minutes until Polt ran out of steam because HerO had killed his entire economy.
Yeah.
And then HerO won the game.
Yeah.
That game is amazing, and I have no idea why people don't rate it as highly as I do.
Yeah,
because
it's brilliant.
it was in Blink era.
yeah, it was
That's
a
the
Blink
only
era,
reason
so it's
why.
like it's kind of forgotten. And
It's such like it is so undeservedly
Forgotten,
set
yeah.
aside. Like that. Oh my god,
Like-
dude. There was like storm drop after storm drop after fucking storm drop, 4 medevac boosts after 4 medevac boosts. Like oh my god, like this game was just unbelievable. Like just there's just harassment going by both sides continuously, simultaneously, with defense happening at the like. Holy crap! Like I
Yeah.
can't even describe how perfect this game was. Like this is what PvT
Should have
like,
been.
this is what prime PvT looks like.
Yeah.
Like a game where two people know the ins and outs of each other's builds and like the style of the time. Well, here
No, they
like,
know the
Hero-
style of each other because neither of them
Of
play
each oth-
normal.
Yeah, sorry. And like they just play it like oh my god, they just play it so well, and they play a style that's interesting and entertaining like above that. Not only is it like something that's like well known. Well, Pulse wasn't like Pulse came out and like kind of was revolutionizing shit right now, but like it was interesting above all of that. It wasn't just like two people playing like really boring defensive like never attack styles. Like it wasn't deathball-y. It was just both of them had the same type of mid and late game where it was just always attacking, always harassing, and when those two styles clash in a with players as good as they were at this time, like,
Yeah.
oh my god, what a fucking series that made.
Yeah.
This is actually a series that kind of convinced me Polt was a true tactical genius. Even though he loses this series, obviously, right? But like, actually, this is also the series that made me think HerO had a lot more to give. Because this actually, because if you send any other Terran player in there, like I don't care if it's Maru, who was actually pretty good at the time. I don't care if it's TY. I don't care if it's like even Tasia. I think HerO like crushes them. It's only Polt at this specific time in this specific meta who can actually match up to HerO, and Polt had already proven it by beating both Classic and Rain, and they both played very similar styles, but it was that's what actually makes it interesting is they both played similar styles and they both stuck to them. Like they did, neither of them were afraid of their style losing to the other guy, even though maybe Polt should have been just because Polt was like mechanically worse, so to speak. But even then, like Ollie pointed out, like it didn't really matter how many SCVs died. Like Polt was still pulling off tactical moves that was forcing HerO to like play above the rim.
Yeah.
It's like a brilliant series the entire way, and it's also like this is like a perfect series to explain like how you have to have like an incredible player on the other side of the game in order to show how great you really are, in a sense. And this is definitely the finals that shows the greatness of HerO, in my opinion. I think of all the series we've talked about of HerO playing, I think this is his best series he's ever played, bar none. And then I actually think similarly of Polt, even though Polt loses this series.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm trying to think of any other series that would come close to this one. But
Like for HerO, like the only other one is like
or
Hyun.
HerO. Yeah, Hyun.
Yeah, like Polt has a bunch of
Perhaps.
them, but like Polt is a very funny sort of player, right? Like,
Yeah.
just the way he
But
plays.
for HerO, I think it has to be this one.
Mm-hmm.
Either this one, Hyun, or the Supernova series in PSL.
Yeah,
But I think it would have to be this one.
I think it's this one.
Just
I-
because
I think this one is for
the
PvT
other two
and
are
then
stomps,
yeah.
where a hero essentially outplays the opponent and styles on them.
Like this one, you
But
can't
in
really
this
say he
series,
outplayed him,
he
but
styles on Polt, but Polt is so good that he survives and pushes Hero to the limit.
yeah,
And they both sort of push each other to the limits, and it makes for an amazing series because
like if you rerun this over and over
That
again,
shows-
Polt might have won.
Yeah.
Like that's how crazy this
Yeah.
was.
perhaps it shows that, as you said, it takes a good player to push out the very best of another player.
Mm-hmm.
And this was the prime example, I think, of two people whose styles and personalities were made to be pitted against each other.
But they only played
Because
against each other
the
this
way they
once.
approached the game, the way they approached the game it just matched perfectly to make an extremely amazing series.
Yeah.
And that Portal Knight game to me is still, if anyone asks me what I think PvT should look like, I always refer them to that game
Yeah.
because it's amazing.
Yeah. All right, and so this is actually, in my opinion, I think this is the last great hero tournament. This is like the last time you see Hero as like a legitimate top contender in the world, basically. And now we're going to go into his downfall, so to speak. But I'm not going to go through any of the tournament results. I'm actually just going to talk about styles because, like I said earlier, like the rise of classic, the rise of innovation in a way. It basically, and the rise of Snoot specifically. Fucking Snoot. But basically, what happens is all these players they start refining these very specific builds and start like crossing out specific styles that are no longer optimal enough to play in the meta. Because the reason they're not optimal enough to play in the meta is because they favor a certain type of play style more than other types. And so you have everybody going more towards like a very rigid, specific play style, and it happens from the rest of Heart of the Swarm, and it gets, in my opinion, even worse in Legacy of the Void. What do you guys think? I think that's why Hero dies.
And that builds become like way more. You need to follow them like precisely the farther along into Legacy we go. Is that what you're saying? Sorry.
Like that's part of it. The other part is like, because it's figured out, like the way the unit compositions counter each other. Like, it clearly favors a specific type of style of play. So, for instance, this is an off tangent. I think Ryung in Wings of Liberty is positionally the best player in TVT. Like, positionally. He knows where to place his tanks. He knows how the other guy is going to move. And he knows how to make the right moves to counteract that. Right? But you go into Heart of the Swarm, and his style dies. And the reason his style dies is because the speed evac comes into play. And so you're no longer rewarding the positional play of somebody like Ryung. In the same sense, I think like Hero's play style is actually taken out of the game. It's why you don't see another player like Hero anymore. Even though we've had like 4 years of waiting.
I think there's also a certain aspect to it where, to me, Hero was never the how should I put this? It was never the finalized article, I think. There was always a few weaknesses in his play where I would look at, for example, the execution of his builds as perhaps the most glaring weakness I spotted in his play, where he would rely on, as I said earlier, these ragtag group of units to keep him safe and stretch himself to the extreme limits. But if he did everything perfectly, then it would work out. But I think that, especially once the Casper players switched over and got into their groove in StarCraft 2, I think the mechanical aspect of the game was raised tenfold. Where I do agree to some degree that, especially mechanically, players were nowhere near the Casper pros or the level that people are at now.
Yeah.
Until
Casper leaves,
2013,
basically.
2014.
Yeah.
And I think Hero struggled to keep up with the growing mechanical demands of the game, where his opponents would no longer be distracted by having a War Prism here, Phoenix is there. He couldn't out-multitask them anymore because these were people that came from Brood War.
Yeah.
And they were used to playing against people like Bisu. So playing against Hero's multitasking and mechanical ability was nothing new to them, and they dealt a lot better with it than his opponents did before. And then we have to remember that until this point in IEM Cologne, Hero was staying in Team House-esque environments all the time.
Yeah.
Where it was OGS at first, and then he was in that team house with, I think, TLO, Jinro, Hawk, Supernova.
The OGS,
Uh,
OGS, and then EGTL, and then there's like another one, right?
yeah, no,
IM.
it was in between the OGS house, and then when they disbanded, he got like a flat with Hawk,
Oh, okay.
TLO,
Yeah,
and Supernova, a bunch of other people, where they created their own team house environment,
Mm-hmm.
and then he moved into the EGTL house. And you see all these peaks of form coinciding uh, with all the other players in these team environments doing decently or doing well too. He was also in the IM team house for a while,
Yeah, I remember that.
and he did well there as well. So I think that environment helped him a lot. But after Cologne, after the EGTL house disbanded, he didn't want that anymore
Mm-hmm.
because
You get tired of it
essentially,
eventually.
yeah, he got tired of it. And I think it was necessary for him. Like if he had given in, I suppose, into that team house mentality and looked for another environment like that, I think he might still be near the top right now. Because I think he had the talents, and I think he had the necessary skill and intelligence, I suppose, to get there. But I think ever since he declined at that point, then
Basically lost
um,
focus.
yeah, he lost focus in a way. That's true. And he never wanted that team environment again.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's the kind of person that would, um, if put on his own, I don't think he would push himself to the limits the way that someone like Coach Park probably did with him.
Mm-hmm.
And
He's
I don't
not.
think,
Yeah.
yeah, he's not.
And he's not like a
'Cause-
prodigy
So
like Life or Tasia who can get away with that shit.
Because
Yeah.
like even during the team house phase when he was in these team houses, like he wasn't one of the ones that was like a Casper regimented person or whatever. Like he wasn't someone who pushed himself. Like Coach Park, I remember there was an interview where Coach Park said that he had to reform, like he had to really push HerO
Mm-hmm.
to make him like practice as much as he wanted HerO to practice.
Yeah.
And like that was a big struggle in the very beginning of the EGTL era. But then towards the end, when EGTL started actually rise more and was actually taking games, and when HerO was the ace player for them and was taking nutty ass games off of people, like that fucking game versus Roro
Mm-hmm.
with the mass Mutacorruptor and
Yeah.
Fester stuff, that game is absurd. Anyone who doesn't know what that game is needs to look that up. But like he towards the end he started to become more regimented. Like Coach Park was able to break him, but then after that, after the EGTL house, he went to the
He tasted freedom.
IM house.
I am.
Oh.
I mean, but he still was in the IM house though.
Yeah, but
And so, but he was also with Coach HerO,
Mm-hmm.
which is, I imagine, someone he's an extremely good coach, but I imagine he may not be as
he's from the ESF zoo, so to speak.
he might
he's
not
not
be
a Casper coach.
yeah,
Yeah.
he's not going to push someone as hard as Coach Park was. And Coach
Yeah.
and HerO and HerO were very good friends as well. He was actually the
Yeah.
one that got, I think he's the one that got HerO into playing SC2, unless that was the OGS coach. I may be wrong on that.
But one of them did. Okay.
No. Yeah, I know that
but
they were
he's very,
friends,
but they
so-
were good there. They were very good friends
Yeah.
before that. That's why he was able to
Get in.
let him into the house. So I'm sure there was not as large of a
Pressure.
there's not as much pressure for him to perform compared to Park.
Yeah. And
then
obviously,
once-
like, IM doesn't give a fuck about team league results in a way.
Yeah, and then he went to MVP, and like MVP was just MVP. Like that's not really a team. That team wasn't that great.
It's like a farming team,
Yeah.
except they're like hilariously good at getting
Yeah.
randomly good players. But
yeah.
Yeah.
So, but then once he left TL, like that was the killer blow to his motivation.
Mhm.
Like I don't know if we're gonna transition into like that phase of anything where we can talk about it now, but like
Yeah.
once he left TL, like there was a I was talking to him during that time, and he was demotivated heavily from that. Like
Mhm.
that was something that really hurt him. I don't think I'm in like the position to like say exactly why that hurt him, but like it was something that really destroyed him mentally and emotionally, and like he didn't have any passion to play the game
anymore.
after that. Like he tried in like the first season of GSL, that 2016, but then like he fell out. Like he kind of disappeared for a while. Then he came back in October with Revolution, and still like he just like he was. You could tell that he was pushing himself to try to play, but like he didn't have it in him anymore. And like even up till now, like anytime he tries to come back again, it's very obvious that he doesn't have a passion for the game that he used to, and it all stems back from when he left TL and how he left TL.
Yeah. I guess I'll put some context to this because it's not like I know any of the details, but there's a definite sense of like company loyalty in Asia, so to speak, where it's kind of like your family, it's kind of like your self-identification in a way. So that would probably break him. That would probably breaks like most Asians. It can. I'm not exactly sure about his case, but it definitely can. It can definitely demotivate you. And I found like motivation and work ethic are the highest correlators to success. And so like if you don't have either of those, it's not like you're gonna Tasia your way to another finals.
Yeah,
Yeah. I know some of the details on how the whole thing went down. I know that. I'm not gonna talk about everything, but I know that TL offered him another contract. We're talking about a point in time where HerO had already been not really putting up results for a long time. But he was such an established figure on TL that there was that sort of sentimental.
You know, like what Red has.
Yeah, sort of like
Basically.
that. But they wanted to keep HerO, but they also needed to be realistic about
You can't just
that.
burn money away like IPL.
Yeah, and especially on a Korean where sustaining a Korean in the new WCS region locked system was a lot more expensive than it was before.
Mm-hmm.
And it was essentially the same with Tasia in the end, where Tasia competed in his last few GSL appearances. He played teamless
Mm-hmm.
and not for TL anymore, because at some point it just wasn't sustainable for TL. So HerO was offered another contract, but uh, essentially he felt a bit
Insulted.
insulted by the low figure, I believe.
yeah,
But
he did.
I was told that it was um,
More than fair based off the ROI.
more than fair. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. More than fair based
Listen,
on the
there's no
results he was
ROI in
putting.
StarCraft 2 players in Korea. In the WCS era, it's not. I'll be realistic.
Yeah.
Like, just looking at the numbers, it doesn't seem like it'd be very good ROI.
Yeah. So essentially, they parted ways then. To me, his career was, I don't want to say over, but it was heading in that direction before he left TL.
Mm-hmm.
Ever since he left the IM house and when he started, ever since he got out of that team house environment, to me, it felt like he wasn't really putting his all into the game anymore.
Yeah.
For someone who was so invested into the game for so long, and you saw these emotional tweets he made, where it was easy to see that he really cared about the game, and he really wanted to do well, and he really wanted to prove himself. And all that suddenly, well, not suddenly, it started fading out, and it had been for a long time. You didn't see the emotional tweets anymore. You didn't see him. It felt like he just cared less about
The
his
game.
performances.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the game overall. And
I mean,
I think whether he would have stayed on TL or not, I don't think it would have made a lot of difference to where his career was going.
mm-hmm.
I think it was obvious at that point
Yeah.
that he would not.
Yeah. And then
He would never reach the same heights again.
from my point of view, I actually think like the way the game evolved, the way the game shifted, the Swarmhost era, like the mines era for Protoss anyway. Like the way the adepts work, the way Ravagers work, the way Liberators work, all this shit. Like I actually think it's anti-hero. I actually think it's anti like stylistic players in general. Like,
Mm.
uh, like if I try to break down like the various ways you play StarCraft 2, just from a stylistic standpoint, there's like basically a lot. There's like the mechanical way. There's micro. There is like there, in a sense, there's like you you innovate like build orders. Maybe that's the way. Timings. Big like tactical moves. Talking about like pull big strategic moves. A very defensive style of like Tasia or Rain. Like very aggressive styles, and like they basically all kind of die out, and there's only like one or two like styles left when you get to like Heart of the Swarm, the end of the Heart of the Swarm, and into Legacy of the Void, where you're not seeing a lot of these stylistic players as often anymore. That's my opinion. Or like,
Yeah, it's the way it's because of the way that Protoss is supposed to open now, in that it is like structured and regimented. Like if you don't follow the right build orders to get to to a certain point, then you will get run over by something that's very punishing.
yeah,
And that's never been HerO's strong point. He's always someone who takes a build and does it in his own way and stretches it as thin as possible to allow him to do any sort of harassment as soon as possible, and try to get as much out of it as he can. And that's just not how Legacy works, really. Like you don't have an early game to allow yourself to make up those kinds of like interesting styles or those weird builds or kind of modify them to your own creative standard. Like you have to do if you want to play PvZ and get up to a third base, you need to do it in by doing XYZ, or else you will die to like a Ling Flood or the Dropper Lord all in or something.
yeah,
But HerO is not the person that wants to do that, and he's not the person who has the patience or time. Well, not time. He doesn't have the patience or
interest.
motivation or interest. Yeah, okay, to like actually study that and come to that realization. He's a very up like ever since 2014, ever since I Am Cologne and up until now, he is the most stubborn player I've ever seen play the game.
Second
Period.
most stubborn. You saw Marine King.
He wasn't really. I mean, okay,
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
like if you're
But
ever
like,
talking about like stubborn as in he never learned anything. Yes.
I mean, and yeah. So like, HerO is like, he is someone who, like, every time I watch him play, I see the exact same thing. He is someone who tries to open up, stretching himself as thin as possible while still trying to grasp at that sense of multitasking and harassment like style that he's always good at in a game where that's not something you can do anymore. And he refuses to accept that, and like ever since he came back, I knew that he wasn't ever going to be as good as he ever was again.
Yeah.
Once I saw him still clinging on to that idea, like I would talk to him still, and he would say like oh my god, like I want to play like stats, like he plays so good now, like he's like it's so hard to do that. And I'm like thinking like yeah, because you are the opposite of stats.
Yeah.
Like you can't play like stats. That's not how you are. Like that's never how you have had success.
Like
And like he will never be able to do that ever again.
like the way I think of Wings of Liberty to Heart of the Swarm to like late Heart of the Swarm to Legacy of the Void, I think counters have been getting worse and worse as time has gone on. So build counters, unit counters, composition counters has been slowly getting worse as time has gone on. Just my opinion. And that actually like I said, it emphasizes very specific types of game styles, very specific types of builds. And that's actually why I don't I got an argument with like a bunch of people. That's why I don't believe this is like the highest skilled era. That's why I don't believe like every top player is better than every player previous, because the meta is so different. The builds are so different. This game rewards very specific things compared to the previous eras, and that's actually why like when people talk about the death of StarCraft 2, they mean it in the popularity, whereas I'm thinking of it in terms of what this game will allow you to do. And I think that's like for me that's actually what the death of StarCraft 2 is about, is like you're taking away a lot of the individual personality of all these different players that had played the game. Like, did you guys see Lenok last night?
Yeah.
Sort of.
Basically, Lenok is in a very similar boat to HerO in the sense that he literally will not play Legacy of the Void games. He will not play Heart of the Storm games. He will play Wings of Liberty games. And guess what? He went mutas, and mutas are trash compared to Hydras. And the only reason he goes mutas is because he loves mutas. Like, he can't help himself. That's all he'll do. That's all he'll do. Like, that's a favorite unit. Like, I love that unit too, but it's like, it's pretty obviously a worse composition in every single way you could possibly think of compared to the Hydra. But he did it anyway because he loves the unit. And in in the earlier parts of Heart of the Swarm, in Wings of Liberty, parts of it anyway, it allowed you to have like that stylistic individuality. And I think that's actually what kills HerO, in my opinion. Besides like all the motivational issues, is he is such an extremely stylistic player in every sense of the word. That's what kills him.
Yeah, I think, and I've talked about this a lot in the past. It's with HerO you had this, and I touched upon this earlier, where I talked about this ideal that he had in mind for how Protoss should be played, and when it was possible to squeeze in a Warp Prism or do something extra here, or spare these 3 Zealots and send them to harass while you're defending at home.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, HerO was, for a long time, the smartest Protoss in the world, because he understood what was possible theoretically with the Protoss race.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But to me, he was also never the finished article of that. He never had to me, the execution or the calmness of mind to do this on a consistent basis. But what I will say is that for HerO's legacy in StarCraft 2, I think a ton of players looked at HerO as someone who had the right ideas and someone who brought concepts to the game that they then took and refined and executed better than him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you look at Protoss games nowadays, if you expand, like 90% of the time there'll be a Warp Prism with it to keep the opponent pinned back at home. And that concept did not exist before HerO.
Mm-hmm.
And in a ton of different builds, you see things that HerO did before anyone else, or at least glimmers of of concepts he brought to the game.
Yeah.
And to me, that's his biggest legacy in the game, is that he sort of showed Protoss the ideal, the right way to play, even though he himself, I would argue, never quite reached it.
I will say this as a counterpoint. I don't think anybody plays like HerO, and like you're talking about this ideal Protoss in HerO's mind, but that ideal Protoss doesn't exist outside of HerO. Like, what I mean by that is like Parting doesn't play like that, Rain didn't play like that, Stats, Classic, CJ, HerO, Zest. None of these guys, like, these are all like, I basically counted all the best Protosses. I guess you can count MC in there, even though he's like earlier than HerO. Like, none of these guys actually play to this ideal Spectre in HerO's mind. HerO's actually the closest to this ideal Spectre. Like, all these other guys we're talking about, they all have better execution in a sense in what they're trying to do, but they're all limited because they don't have that vision in HerO's mind, so they don't push it to that extreme. But it's also like why he has that random weakness in him, where like he pushes it too far. But
I also think though that they actually,
like, they take things from him. They take it
because yeah.
They take things from him, but it's like, it's not like they're playing like him. That's my point.
I think saying that either though.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying though, is they took the right things from HerO, but they didn't, like, where he would go overboard and warp in a million Zealots and then 8 PTs and lose everything and throw the game.
Yeah.
They figured out the right amount to do that, while also building the right army and hitting the right timings and making the right moves and staying calm throughout all that. And
but
never letting off.
Yeah, like,
where that was HerO's weakness, but the concepts he brought to the game
were good.
There are a lot of Kesper players who, when they switched over,
they named him as the hero they watched.
In a GSL interview, yeah, it was they picked HerO as the guy to watch, the guy they learned from because I remember Bisu saying
He thought HerO
that
was the most like him.
he thought HerO was he knew what he said. HerO knows what he's doing, and
For whatever
to me
reason,
that's what
though,
it was.
this is a random
Yeah,
jab
Bisu
at
was
Bisu.
not
Bisu,
great.
I think Bisu actually
Yeah.
watched more Alfie than he watched HerO. Just the way he played those force
Yeah.
fields.
That's true. No, but I mean, there was also, I think a GSL interview with Rain. I think it was group selections
Yeah.
for one of the series he won,
Mm-hmm.
where he said he wanted to play against HerO at some point in the tournament
Mm-hmm.
because he had watched a ton of his VODs and studied HerO a lot and wanted to see how he would do against HerO.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that says a lot about at least the ideas and concepts that HerO brought to StarCraft 2 and how valid they are still to this day.
Yeah.
Where some of these concepts, map control aspects, army movements, nobody did that before HerO, and
Yeah.
now they're pillars of every Protoss game.
Yeah.
That
Mm-hmm.
it's unthinkable to imagine a game where these concepts aren't there, but that's how it was before HerO.
Yeah.
And then it became the standard.
Yeah, basically there's
So to
like
me,
three main Protosses, if you want to look at, that like, kind of define the entire history of StarCraft 2 in a sense. There's MC first, HerO second, and then Reign third. And then every Protoss after that is like an iteration of a combination of those three types of players. Obviously, though, like they don't go to the extremes of any of those three. Nobody's as defensive as Reign, nobody's as aggressive as MC, and nobody's as weird or like as like defensively thin and aggressively multitasking as HerO is.
Mm.
Like there's
I would probably leave there as well
put who?
because he's SOS.
Oh, SOS. SOS is like his own
Because
thing.
he's-
SOS is his own
Yeah.
thing.
SOS is
That's
the
why.
outlier.
Yeah, I was trying to
SOS doesn't
break
teach anybody
the
shit,
chain of
man.
that
He doesn't teach anybody shit.
Yeah.
SOS is the epitome of knowing literally anything about the game, like at all, and no one else being able to understand that. Like his game sense, he is the definition of just having good game sense above anything else, and that's impossible to learn from.
Yeah, like he's very different from these guys. He's very different from every Protoss in history. So yeah, I think that should wrap it up for this one. Basically, we've gone through his HerO's entire history, his achievements, his downfalls, his style. You have any final words about HerO?
You can go first, Ollie.
Okay. Well, why I'm a HerO fan is essentially my whole esports adventure started because of HerO, where I was struggling to beat Zerg in 2011 and deal with the 1-1-1, which at the time, we touched on this, was horribly broken.
Yes.
And Protoss in general was a shit race. It was terrible.
Absolutely.
And then HerO showed up to that DreamHack and the MLG before that. And he played different to everybody else, and it was fun to watch that guy. And I remember trying to study MC, and I found nothing appealing about his playstyle.
Punch him in the face.
At all.
Yes.
Yeah. And then HerO came along, and it was fun to watch him. It was fun failing horribly at trying to replicate him.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started following him regularly, and this is how I got into StarCraft esports, where essentially my StarCraft esports experience was built around following HerO and then reading up on people that played against HerO and watching their games and all that.
Yeah.
It was sort of built around HerO.
Mm-hmm.
And I started writing for WCS America because HerO was in it.
Yeah.
And
that's how desperate he
long
was
story
about
short,
following HerO.
Yeah. Nobody wrote for WCS America at the time because nobody cared about it,
Yeah.
which I don't understand. It was a decent tournament.
Mm-hmm.
And long story short, I was hired for TL, and now I'm editor-in-chief.
Still a trial to me.
It's all thanks to HerO in some way.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm thankful for having been able to watch him, what he did for the game.
Gemini, any last words for this hero funeral?
Um,
Oh,
That's basically what it sounds like. It sounds like a fucking wake.
yeah.
it is though.
I mean, his career is pretty much
It's over.
It's over.
rip.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I have similar things with Ollie in that, like I mentioned already, like that one game versus Idra was like the moment that I became a hero fan because he played like he said, he played the game differently. He gave Protoss something that was not either a two base all in or sitting back and macroing to death ball and a moving at one point. He was the person that made it interesting, gave you different builds, and gave you a way to actually play the fucking video game. Like it was just something completely else. And watching that like evolve throughout time to see the things he left for the game and to see how they became core aspects of the game and how they made Protoss become a good race because of it. Um, it was I don't know that it was just really amazing to see and to see someone who is like so passionate behind it as well because you saw him wear his heart on his sleeve like when he would lose a series like especially there was one versus Huck at Providence,
Mm-hmm.
the
The
MLG
Huck
that Huck
victory.
ended up winning.
Mm.
He like you could see how much that loss affected Hero personally. Like it'll always be just like ingrained in my head when he was just sitting there with his head in his hands, and then Huck comes into the booth, and he literally you see him just like do the head tilt like sigh. Like even Huck was like, dude,
Oh shit.
like I can't believe this. Like it screws with you.
Mm-hmm.
Like thinking about how much he thought about the game and how much it affected him.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just something that I could easily relate to, being that StarCraft was like the only thing that I had like going through high school and whatnot. So like it's something that allowed me to connect to him, not only through the game in that like we both thought about the game in the same way, like we thought that this is how Protoss should be played, but it connected me on a mental level, um, to someone personality like who has a similar personality to what I had. So that was something that kept me with him up until this day. And while I'll always be loyal to him, no matter
Bad he
how
got.
obviously bad his career
Just
has
blame the
gotten.
game, not the player.
Yeah, unfortunately. Um, and I do wish that when he left TL, I do wish that that was him saying like I wish that was just his official retirement. I think it's really unfortunate that he's become like some of the other players who just kind of just fizzle out out of nothing like and don't earn the proper send off that they have deserved for this game.
Or like
So,
you're like
so I do
top a
still
zombie
wish
for 8 years.
like who?
Top.
Well,
Right.
I mean, he's actually become a funny streamer now.
Yeah, at
I love
least.
his stream. His stream is great, dude. I love Top stream.
Okay.
But that's the thing.
Yeah,
Like Hero was never meant to be that person either
Mhm.
because he is too competitive
Yeah.
and he's too prideful. He he like whenever he plays, whenever he streams, he would always still think that he could be as good as he used to be, and he could never get over that. He could never become like the more entertainer kind of person.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I do wish he would have
Let it go.
he would have just he would have just accepted it and just retired when the things with TL wouldn't work out, because then I think he would have still at least gotten a proper send off. And now instead
It's just us three.
he's just kind of floating out there, and he's lost
That could
all
be
hope
worse.
for any
Yeah.
sort of comeback at all.
All right.
And it's sad.
All right. Here are my final words, I guess, for Hero. I actually think Hero is like one of those players I pick out, along with guys like Gumiho, maybe Supernova, definitely MVP, like Sue, like Life, like these super stylistic players who basically like went out like screaming into the night basically against like the ever changing StarCraft 2 meta, which like kind of forces a specific style where like they refuse to bend to the game. And even though like this game has essentially forced every player along a similar path, Like they tried to stick to their style as long as they could. In Gumito's case, he surrendered. He became a mech player, but in the other cases, like they all went screaming into the night, so to speak, and they all played like their own styles, and that's actually the for me anyway. That's the best part of StarCraft 2, or was these individualistic styles where you kind of forced your own personality into the game. You forced your own will into the game. You said, "This is who I am. This is how I'm going to win, and I'm going to beat the world trying to do it." And that's actually something why like I kind of respect HerO for continuing to play like that, even though he's complete trash now. It's like I like that mentality, man. I like saying this is who I am. I'm gonna stand dying here or whatnot, and that's actually why I respect HerO anyway. And I think that's like that's a good send off for HerO, right? I think that ends it here. You guys have any shout outs besides the HerO?
No.
All right.
Shout out to you. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I appreciate
so-
being able to talk about HerO for endless hours
Yeah.
at any point in time.
Yeah. Shout out.
Give me a sick follow on Twitter at ggemini19. Give me that sick sellout money.
All right.
Oh yeah, right.
uh,
Give me one as well. I'm at DLOlli
All right.
underscore.
And then
That's all I got.
And if you do a Zest video at some point,
all right.
bring me back on.
Yeah. And
'Cause I have a lot to say about him.
and for me, I will end this with an insult to balanced designers of StarCraft 2. I'm totally not down with this non-stylistic shit. All right. I'll see you guys later.